So
I
it
think
starts.
communications is what Jen graduated in.
The other lady?
Wow.
Okay.
And I explained to her,
It's like
so
psychology.
it's not much, so I'll just sit in there with her and let her flag and what she wants copies of.
Yeah.
How do we bill it? Is she like handing money or what do
She
we
has to
do?
pay before she can take a copy.
Okay.
So if she takes copies, she'll have to give you the money before she can take them.
Like cash, and then I bring it to you guys?
Mark camera out and just text it.
Or she can take pictures of them free?
Yeah, she takes.
Get that from both sides.
What was I gonna say?
Maybe you need to sit on a phone.
See,
I should have been texting.
I got a jacket.
It says on
I
air.
think we're on air, Mike.
Okay, good.
We are on air.
I have to, something very important I have to do
Okay.
first.
Oh, so there's no super.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you all. And I would like to formally open the School Board Area Public Schools Independent School District 834 board meeting. The date is November 21st, 2019, and it's approximately 1 or 2 minutes after 6. Would the secretary please read the roll call?
Chair Potacek,
Here.
Vice Chair Pearson,
Here.
Treasurer Weisberg,
Here.
Clerk Stivland,
Here.
Director Burns,
Here.
Director Pelletier,
Here.
and Director Riley.
Here.
You have a quorum?
Thank you. Could you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we are going to read the district mission statement.
And I have that. The mission of Stillwater Area Public Schools, in partnership with students, family, and community, is to develop curious individuals who are active and engaged leaders in an ever-changing world by challenging all students as they travel along their personalized learning pathways.
Thank you, Director Burns. And our school board goals? Tina?
In partnership with community, parents, and students, the School Board of Stillwater Area Public Schools ensures excellence in education by increasing student achievement for all students, securing long-term financial stability of the district, and increasing community trust and engagement.
Thank you, Director Riley. This is the time we usually go to the approval of the agenda, but before I ask for a motion to approve tonight's agenda, I would like to share some thoughts and one change for tonight's meeting. Earlier this afternoon, Superintendent Denise Pontrelli and I talked about the secondary literacy curriculum. Although you can see she's not with us this evening, I believe that we both agreed on the following. Since our November 14th board meeting and the 3-3 board vote on the proposed secondary literacy curriculum, there has been a great deal of conversations and questions. Both Denise and my professional goal is to get a 7-0 board vote on approval for a secondary literacy curriculum adoption. That may not happen, but we're going to try very hard to come as close as we can. It might end up as a 6-1, 5-2, 4-3, but we are seriously going to pursue a 7-0 target. We are both in agreement that there needs to be a shared understanding and a collective vision of what the literacy curriculum should look like in practice and in implementation. We both want to maximize our resources to improve student appreciation and reading proficiency. How do we propose getting there? By the school board and in administration spending more time around the table, talking, listening, and sharing thoughts and concerns. In that spirit, I'm taking action item E, secondary literacy curriculum, off tonight's agenda. Instead, Superintendent Pontrelli and I will schedule a work session in December. In addition, we will make some classroom observations available. Board members will have an opportunity to see these classes firsthand and have an opportunity to see, share, hopefully discuss both the elementary implementation and the secondary piloting of the literacy curriculum. In closing, I'd like to say the good news is that the school board, the turnout this evening shows that the administration and the teachers and parents of 834 care a great deal about the academics, literacy, and curriculum. Thank you for that interest. And now, with having removed secondary literacy curriculum under action items E, I would entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Shelley moved. Is there a second? Director Weisberg, seconded.
Could I just ask a question, Chair? So can you please, this was discussed this afternoon with Superintendent Pontrelli?
Correct.
So the action item tonight, what was your secondary literacy curriculum discussion to be?
I'm not going to go into that. I'm saying her and I talked about it, and we thought where we could move forward the best was by removing it, and that's what I'm proposing to do.
And then we're going to have
A work session.
A work session probably as soon as we can in December.
to discuss the secondary curriculum?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second to approve tonight's agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye and raising your right hand, please.
Aye.
Motion carries. Introductory items, student reports, and I'll turn it to Assistant Superintendent Bob McDowell.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to remind the board and inform the community that Superintendent Pontrelli is representing the school district at another event tonight, therefore can't be here this evening. And then before I get to recognition, I just want to remind people that out in the mail today are our kindergarten packets. And so if you have a student that is going to be soon joining us in kindergarten, you will be receiving these in the mail, so be on the lookout for them. With that, our recognition tonight, I'd first like to call up Sarah Damon. Sarah Damon teaches AP Human Geography and Global Studies and leads geography-related service learning projects. Sarah is active with the Minnesota Alliance for Geography Education and designs and delivers professional development for geography educators focused on global education and geospatial technologies. Sarah obtained her BS in Political Science and Norwegian from St. Olaf College, her MA in Education from the College of St. Thomas, and a certificate in K-12 Geographic Information Systems from the University of Montana. Sarah was awarded a Fulbright Distinguished Award in Teaching from the U.S. Department of State and William J. Fulbright Foreign Scholarship Board. Sarah was one of 35 U.S. educators who traveled abroad. She spent January through June of 2019 in Gaborone, Botswana, studying in the Population Studies Department at the University of Botswana, researching, conducting interviews, and creating curriculum for Stillwater students. Sarah's project focuses on understanding changing population demographics in Southern Africa and local efforts to harness a youthful population for social and economic development. Congratulations, Sarah.
Thanks. I think you covered most of it there, so I think I'm done. No, I did just put together a quick little summary to present tonight, because it's really hard to summarize 5 months of learning in just a few minutes, but I'll try. So here we go. I was fortunate to spend spring 2019 as a recipient of the Fulbright Distinguished Award in Teaching. The Fulbright DAT is a U.S. State Department program that makes it possible for K-12 teachers to spend a semester outside the U.S. engaged in a self-designed inquiry project. My cohort included 38 U.S. teachers, and we traveled to 12 different countries. There were 2 of us in Botswana. So I spent 5 months living in the southern African country of Botswana, in the capital city of Gaborone. And Botswana is a landlocked country. It's primarily desert and has a population of just over 2 million people. So the population of Minnesota is about 5.5 million. So it's a very small country, very sparsely populated. My inquiry project focused on understanding Botswana population demographics, in particular its youth bulge, and Botswana's efforts to harness the power of youth for sustainable development. While I was in Botswana, I took a course at the university in the demography of Botswana. I conducted more than 30 interviews with local experts on topics including demography, population policy, family planning, HIV and AIDS, maternal mortality, mental health, education, youth empowerment, youth unemployment, and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. I visited 6 public and private schools to observe classrooms and interview teachers. And probably my most rewarding experience was working with a local non-governmental organization, or NGO, we call them nonprofits here, with weekly UN Sustainable Development Goal seminars for young people at the public library in Gaborone. And I also helped that organization with an after-school computer club, ICT club, at a junior secondary school, which in their system is roughly equivalent to our 8th, 9th, and 10th grades. I also made a great contact at the Botswana Ministry of Education, and he invited me to present to teachers on technology integration in the social studies, and also to prepare some materials that he could use in the future with teachers that were interested in bringing geographic information systems, or GIS, computer mapping to their classrooms, which has been one of my passions over the years. I also had the opportunity to travel widely within Botswana and to the neighboring countries of Zimbabwe and South Africa. So after all of that, the end product was a 25-page summary report and an online 4-lesson geography curriculum module. One of the lessons includes an online global dialogue between the learners in Botswana and SAHS learners that we are currently engaged in. We're using an online portal called Flipgrid. So students on this end are recording videos that can be viewed in Botswana. And on Monday, the Botswana students will be recording videos that we can then record or can watch here. And these lessons have been shared with U.S. educators at the local, state, and national level. So all in all, it was a phenomenal experience. I learned every day. I met a lot of amazing people. I definitely was pushed out of my comfort zone. There were a lot of highs and lows. I progressed through all the stages of cultural adaptation, if you're familiar with those, you know, like the honeymoon period and then the annoyance period where everything is just horrible, and then the kind of the recovery and a period where you get used to things and you kind of start figuring things out and you realize that you will survive. I like to joke that there were blood, sweat, and tears. My first week there, I fell into a drainage hole, and I ended up with a bruised and bloodied leg, could barely walk, limped my way home. The temperatures were regularly over 100 degrees. The straps of my backpack were stained white from salt of my sweat, and I definitely cried several times, happy tears and tears of frustration, including a very embarrassing episode in the office of the research director at the University of Botswana. She offered me a tissue. That was about it as far as the empathy went. One tissue. But anyway, despite the challenges, I would return in a heartbeat, and I definitely thank the Stillwater Schools for making it possible for me to pursue my educational passions. And I'm happy to share materials. I sent some things through email, and also to answer any questions that you have. So, thank you
so much. Sarah, we're so proud of you and what you've done. And I know with my colleagues here, there are going to be some questions.
Okay.
So with that, Shelley?
Thank you. First, congratulations.
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about how has it changed your teaching now that you're back?
Sure. It's actually a very difficult question to answer, and it sounds a little bit cliche, but when you spend a lot of time in places that don't have nearly as many resources as we have, here it actually makes you a little frustrated as a teacher because you see kids working hard under conditions that are really difficult. And we have a lot of fantastic students here, but we also take a lot for granted, in terms of, just the resources that we have available. So I think it just makes me maybe a little wishful, that maybe some of our students would understand how fortunate they are and kind of grasp a few more of those opportunities a little more tightly.
Sure. Thank you.
Liz?
I was glad you talked about the lesson that one of the lessons you developed when you said that our students are making videos and they're making videos. What are the videos about?
Yeah, so the videos are focused on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So each student was asked to choose a goal that is most interesting or important to them and to explain why. And then also to talk about roadblocks that they see existing in terms of difficulty in achieving those goals. And then what do they believe they can personally do to make a difference on that goal? And then what do they believe we can do as a nation, as a country? So.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Really amazing.
Anyone else?
I just have a comment and a question too. I did read through your summary document and it's amazing. And I wanted to say you really helped me understand a little bit more about what your experience was like. You wrote it in such a way it was very enjoyable to read. And I appreciated how much emotion you put into it and that you made the struggles very clear as well as the successes, because I think so many times when we present something like that, you want to hide all of that sort of messiness. I really appreciated that. I know more than one time I've cried in your classroom. You've touched all three of my kids' lives in a way that is unmeasurable. So here we go. Thank you. Thank you for this. I'm so excited about this curriculum and that our kids are being connected in this way to the rest of the world. I think this is an amazing experience for them. I can't wait to continue hearing about how it's impacting them in the classroom, and I hope that you can come back and give us an update of some of the things that you're experiencing from them, like through them. I know this is just getting started, so you probably don't have a lot to share, but can you share at all what the kids are thinking right now about this experience?
Well, we did a pilot last spring, and so my colleagues that were here at the high school recruited some students to participate, and then I worked with the students in Botswana to help them.
Yeah.
So it went pretty well. But we did have some technical difficulties. So Botswana is actually a middle-income country. So, one of the stereotypes about the entire African continent is that everybody's poor. That's not true. And the school where I was a fairly nice school, but they still didn't have reliable Wi-Fi. So we couldn't do it in the same way that we would do it here. So we had to use our phones to record the videos and then upload the videos to the website. But the trial was pretty good. And I think what the students here will really enjoy is just seeing the students and listening to the students and learning, for example, that they really speak great English. English is one of the official languages. So that's usually the first comment that students make on this end is like, oh, you can speak English? Yep, they can. So we'll see how it unfolds. Cross my fingers that we don't have technical difficulties. But.
Sarah, as I wrote you this afternoon, and Sarah referenced those attachments you sent us, and we'll try to get those. Anybody in the audience wants to see those, so we'll try to get them up on the website for availability. So, and if you have anything additional that comes on, please share it. But thank you.
one
Go
more
ahead.
thing too. Didn't you just win an award for this curriculum as well? I don't know if.
It was something different, actually, yeah. That was a lesson on Morocco. So
Oh, okay, that was something.
I'm
totally.
enamored with the African continent, so I've been there multiple times, doing multiple things, but yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, congratulations on
Yeah,
that too.
thank you.
And thanks, everybody, for Fulbright, Senator Fulbright.
Oh,
That's, he had a brilliant foresight on that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
I'd like to call Laura Larson up to the podium, please, for our next recognition.
Welcome.
Laura is the district's coordinator of facilities and site operations and was awarded the 2019 Outstanding Contributor Award by the Minnesota Educational Facilities Management Professionals Organization. This award is in recognition of Laura's outstanding dedication and commitment to educational facilities management. MASMS is a professional organization committed to promoting excellence in the operation and care of educational facilities. Congratulations, Laura.
I don't have a lot of prepared statements, but I want you to know that I travel all the way to St. Cloud every year.
Wow.
That's what I do.
Good for you.
No, I've been in the organization for 20 years and have seen it grow just exponentially over the years. I was the chair of the legislative committee for a number of years, and now I have been the president of the Metro chapter for a number of years. Little asterisk, first woman ever, because it's a mostly male field, but that is changing. It is changing. I love the organization because we help each other. This is a field where you can't know everything. There's no way to know everything. As technology changes, as our generations, different generations coming up, and what I do for the organization right now is I put together the educational sessions for the Metro chapter meetings. I failed to mention that we do have a certification program that we foresee will be kind of the gold standard for facility managers being hired in the field. I really enjoy my work. I enjoy MASMS, and I'm very proud to work at a district where our contributions to the school environment is honored regardless of in what way it demonstrates itself. So, thank you.
Thank you. We're very, very proud of you. Do we have some questions or comments?
I just have one.
Shelley does.
Or how long have you been in the district?
I've been in this district for 7 years.
Nice. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you. In my anxious way to get to the recognition, I passed over our student reports, so
No,
cool.
you're good. So it has only been a week, so we don't have that much, but I would like to share with you guys what Student Council has been working on for our term, at least in our term. One of our big things that we want to focus in on is making sure that our peers who are in the council are being involved with like the district and also the community. So we have asked them to join committees. So we have people on the community design team, which we're actually going to be talking about tonight, the Cultural and Relations Committee, the Innovations and Pathways Committee, in which they're doing like a lot of good work, and the World's Best Workforce, in which we're working with Director Siblin on that. So it's been a lot of fun, and we talk a lot about it, and we're so grateful that we're able to be a part of that. As people on Student Council too, this is what we joined it for, and so we're really grateful for having the opportunity to be a part of this great process, and we hope to continue doing that and making sure that our peers, who I see a lot of them are out in the audience tonight, thank you guys for coming, and we also have spots for you guys too, so definitely students are always welcome to partner up with Student Council and doing all those great activities.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
I just want to say thank you for your leadership, because I know I've been involved in enough committees over the years that that having student voice involved is something that we've wanted for a really long time, and it's proven to be challenging to have students show up and commit and actually participate in the conversation. And I appreciate your leadership for helping to make that happen, because it's very, very helpful. We appreciate it.
Okay. And now I won't drag it out. I'll let you go.
Thank you. Today I'd like to use my student report time to speak on a topic that I care deeply about and that affects both myself and my peers, and that is our teachers. So usually teachers talk about their students, but today I would like to be the student that talks about my teachers. We as not only a district, but as a community value our teachers so much. As students, both Kulik and I can say that we hold our teachers in such high regard. We trust our teachers, and we were taught to trust them to teach us the material we need to know and understand to be successful in the most effective way. These teachers are the ones who have the education degrees, the countless hours of training, and the first-hand experiences of working with our district students. As a student being taught and instructed by these teachers daily, I've had first-hand experience with the teaching methods these teachers use and the impact the different methods have had on my learning. I'd like to focus in on the literacy curriculum presentation that the ELA teachers took so much time to research and finalize before presenting to the board last week. Sitting up here, it was clear to see how much extra time, preparation, and dedication the curriculum committee had put into finding what they believed would be the English curriculum that would be the most beneficial to all students' learning. Last year in my English class, my classmates and I had the privilege to pick and choose what we wanted to read. We got to read about things we were passionate about, and at the end of the unit, we were expected to have an engaging group discussion about different perceptions and perspectives we had been introduced to through our reading. Having the flexibility to choose our texts made us actually want to engage in the class and read more. This being said, last year, I felt like I really took control of my own learning. I legitimately wanted to read more, and that's in my junior year, which is arguably the most stressful year of a high school student's career. I know the secondary literacy curriculum is not on the agenda for tonight anymore, and I hope my experience as a student of these teachers will be considered an additional conversation that will happen in December. At one of the previous board meetings this year, there was a presentation given that had asked community members what they valued most about the 834 district. The majority's answer was our teachers. At the end of the day, the teachers are the ones who work hands-on with the curriculum and are the ones who know what is best for us students. I hope we all keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the open forum, but before I have, and Julie Mock, Julie, you can come, and while you come, I'll read these instructions that I always use. I would say that we have 15 speakers lined up tonight. Sometimes I like to be a little bit more generous than the 3 allotted minutes. If they run over tonight, I'm not going to do that. So if you get to that point where it's end, we'll let you finish that sentence. But otherwise, I'll try not to use the gavel. I don't want to gavel anybody down. But before we start, I'm just going to go through the sign-in procedure and hopefully some thoughts we share with you as far as procedure once you do speak. If you wish to speak to the school board, you will be able to do so at the start of the school board meeting during open forum. You may sign in only for yourself, not other individuals or groups, and only in person. The sign-in sheet is made available 30 minutes prior and up to the start of the meeting. Due to time limitations, we will limit the number of speakers to 15, and I'm glad we did tonight, with each speaker receiving 3 minutes. If you spoke at the last meeting and we're just talking about the future, please consider allowing others to sign in before you. After you address the board, please leave the podium. Stillwater Area School District welcomes input from citizens as community involvement fosters better decision-making and improved learning for all students. While comments and questions are welcome during open forum, law prohibits the board from discussing concerns about individual employees or students in a public meeting. We will stop the proceedings immediately if an employee or student privacy issues are raised, and direct the speaker to forward comments regarding individual employees or students to the superintendent, or for tonight, assistant superintendent. Because we are modeling civil discourse for our community, we encourage that students, or rather that speakers, must present their testimony in a respectful manner. Vulgarity, character attacks, malice, or specific complaints identifying staff or students by name or implication will not be permitted. The board will not deliberate, discuss, or engage in a conversation with speakers during open forum. However, the board may ask administration to review the concerns presented. And our next speaker is, after Julie, is going to be Anita Foyt Craigs. So, Julie, it's all yours.
All right. My name is Julie Mock. I live in Oak Park Heights. This is my 29th year of teaching in the Stillwater School District. I've taught first, second, and third grade in 3 different buildings. The literacy plan for the middle school and high school were presented on October 10th. My understanding is that Director Burns, Pelletier, and Pearson had questions, which were answered. Then November 14th, you saw a report by experts in their field and voted it down. Director Stivlin, you even told the public that this program was outlawed in Arkansas, which is just plain false. My question to the board in regards to this program, who are the experts that you're going to listen to? If not your teachers who have dedicated their lives and careers to literacy and teaching reading, the no vote shows distrust for our hard-working teachers and negates the hours and months of research and time dedicated to their proposal. And when will the board be held accountable for making false statements, which the general public assumes is the truth since it's coming from you? Another question for you, how are we able to be claiming to be fiscally responsible when we have 3 times the typical legal expenses than previous years? Spending over $21,000 on legal fees is close to the same as 1 full-time paraprofessional or the same as outfitting 4 classrooms with literature for all learners. In short, your legal fees have literally taken books out of the hands of children. Let's look at ethics. In the memo we're all familiar with, number 6 in particular, dealing with requests for auditors, I'm hoping the public learns who put number 6 in the findings memo. Along with that, how did you ever get to the point where a memo became an action item without having discussion at a publicly posted meeting? Isn't this a violation of open meeting law again? We, the community, are wanting some answers. I'm requesting a response to my questions from the board chair at the December 12th meeting. I agree with the community member who stated, the sheer arrogance of the board is utterly offensive to anyone who works here. I am offended.
Will be our second speaker, and on deck is Chris Olson.
Good evening. I'm Anita Foyt Craigs from Lakeland. I am honored to serve on the community design team from the community of Lakeland. I'm an empty nester. My daughter went through Afton Lakeland, through Oakland, and through the high school. I've been around for an issue or two. I have worked side by side with you, Board Chair Potacek, on several bonds, levies, and boundary changes. Director Pearson, you and I served on PTAs, serving at our respective schools. You both know that I work hard for the common good of our school district. I bring to the table all that I have learned from these experiences. As a member of the community design team, I am here to say that it is my perception that our work has been honest and thoughtful. Every table I have sat on has been engaged in thorough conversations on topics handed to us. The process used by Cunningham Group has been taking us down a path to explore a range of options that gives all voices a chance to be heard. Although the hours have been grueling, it has been my experience people on the CDT are trying their best to create a useful plan for the district. Last Tuesday's show of hands concretely showed that we have consensus. Although not unanimous, it is obvious the priorities are to replace Lake Elmo Elementary and expand Brookview. I ask that as you prepare for your December 12th vote, you vote to expand Brookview. That is what the majority of the CDC is in favor of. Thank you.
And next is Chris Olson. And Chris, I'll just mention that Garth Sherman is after you. Okay, please.
My name is Chris Olson, and I live on Broadway Street in Stillwater. Hello, board members, Dr. McDowell, students, and our broader school community. Board members, in the wake of shocking and damaging votes recently made by several of you, I try to remind myself of positive school-related connections we have shared in the past. For instance, Director Stivland, we're both Oles, and we have chatted at various Stonebridge and district events. Director Weisberg, you and I were the co-chairs of Stonebridge's Arts and Humanities Festival for years. Director Pearson, as Stonebridge moms, we did a Bible study together and even walked the perimeter of the school property to pray for the year ahead. Chair Potacek, we have chatted at many district fundraising events. Director Pelletier, we served on the search committee years ago for hiring the orchestra teacher at the high school. Directors Burns and Riley, I have not had the occasion to make this kind of connection, but hope we can in the future. But I'm not here to reminisce about times when all of our school passions aligned. Instead, I'm here to talk about hurdles. Hurdles that obstruct the pace of student learning. Hurdles that some of you, with recent votes, have thrown in front of staff and teachers, and therefore our kids. These votes have been on multiple issues. When you voted to delay building expansion plans, you threw down hurdles that interrupt how we accommodate children in growing areas of our community. This obstructs student learning. When you voted to create extra work for administration to run an end around the community design team and to redo clean audits, you threw down hurdles that erode trust and distract from day-to-day operations. This obstructs student learning. And last week, when you voted to negate hundreds of hours of work done by highly qualified professional educators to recommend sound literacy curriculum, you threw hurdles before the very experts who are educating our kids. Experts whom, according to survey data, our community deeply trusts. This most certainly obstructs student learning. These hurdles even create roadblocks for the 3 goals you set for the board this year around achievement for all students, long-term financial stability, and building community trust and engagement. Not meeting these goals also will drive our students to neighboring districts. So, with many important decisions ahead, please be a board that votes in ways that clear the track of hurdles so all of our students can run strongly into their bright futures ahead. Thank you.
And Garth, you are next, and behind you will be Amy Youngman.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Potacek and board members. My name is Garth Sherman from Woodbury. As a member of the current community design team, I wanted to share that I've been impressed with the professionalism and engagement of every one of the members of the team, and have been inspired and energized by the process so far. The Cunningham Group has done a great job making sure everyone on the team has had ample opportunities to be heard and that people are respectful and considerate of diverse opinions. Refreshingly, there seems to be overwhelming agreement among the CDT on many items. After members were given the opportunity to tour all buildings in the district in Workshop 4, held on November 4th, the 9 tables of members were asked to write down what they thought the district's top priorities were. Most of them provided 3 or 6 priorities. For those members on the board who aren't on the CDT, you've probably seen it already, but I'd like to share a snippet of the agglomerated results of the team's top-rated priorities, which was entitled appropriately by the Cunningham Group as Common Ground. In light of the board's upcoming vote on December 12th to expand or not expand Brookview, and given that the CDT doesn't meet again until after that vote, I'd like to point out that expanding Brookview was number 2 of all those priorities. 8 of the 9 tables felt it was important to capture expanding Brookview as a top priority. 8 out of 9 tables. And I didn't go to Stillwater School, so my math isn't that great, but 8 out of 9 is an overwhelming consensus. So context is always important, and I happened to read online comments this week from a CDT member that they felt the CDT's high prioritization of the expansion of Brookview is no longer valid because there's been discussion that expanding Brookview alone isn't enough to allow capacity for the roughly 1,600 elementary kids that are going to be projected to be in the Lake Elmo and Brookview boundaries by year 2024. It's a very valid point. However, I want to share the context of the CDT's prioritization discussions that happened around those prioritizations. Most, if not all, of the tables weren't proposing the Brookview expansion as a standalone, one-and-done solution. The consensus was that it needs to happen in addition to a new elementary school in that part of the district by 2024, and a new Lake Elmo, but a Brookview expansion can be started now. The analogy I'll make is that we have a bleeding wound, but not having enough pre-K, K-5 student capacity, especially in Lake Elmo and Brookview boundaries, and by all accounts, it's gonna get worse. By not expanding Brookview, it seems like we're saying we shouldn't apply pressure or bandage the wound because it won't be enough, all while the bleeding is continuing right now. I think it's important to acknowledge we can expand Brookview as it was designed to be, to hold at least 600 students, rebuild Lake Elmo, and build a new 600 student pre-K through 5 in that boundary, and we'll still have just enough capacity to meet the projected need. I think I can speak for all the CDT that we look forward to being advocates to help sell this why to the community. And just a quick final comment. Yesterday, I received my Washington County 2020 estimated property taxes, and it showed ISD to 834's portion of taxes going down by $200, so thank you. With the Brookview expansion already being calculated into those taxes,
Okay,
what better
you're gonna
opportunity?
have to end pretty quick here.
Okay,
Thank you. While you are, after Amy is Josiah Hill.
Good evening, board directors. I was planning on starting with a thank you to Mike Potachek for adding the secondary curriculum for a vote tonight as an action item, but at this late minute, I'm gonna have to scratch that from my agenda. So I will start with a thank you though for Director Pelletier digging into the board initiated legal costs at the last meeting. The amount spent through August was just over $21,500. How many teachers could we have put through Orton Gillingham training with the money that the board has dumped into legal expenditures? Well, at $1,000 a teacher, that'd be 21 teachers to date. And if our spending continues the way that it has, by the end of the year, I would probably guess 25 to 30 teachers. If we continue this pace of spending on board-initiated legal expenditures, we are going to incur more than a 367% increase in board spending on this category this year alone. When we see such dramatic increases in spending, it should lead one to ask, well, what has changed? What's changed in 2019 over our spending in 2018? We have the same superintendent. We have the same general administration. We're using the same law firm. Neither year saw boundary changes, school closures, or referendums. So one pretty major change that we can note is that we swore in new board members, members who campaigned heavily on the promises of trust, transparency, and healing, even using the catchphrase in their campaign, "We are hope," which consisted of letters from directors Weisberg, Riley, and Pearson's last names. But I'm asking exactly, what are you hoping for? To pad the pockets of our lawyers? To terminate Superintendent Denise Pontrelli at all costs? To watch teachers who are excited about new curriculum leave board meetings hopeless and heartsick? To have elementary students in their gift of an elementary school receiving band training in conference rooms and art in the library? To have our previous student board representatives bullied on back pages on Facebook while board members sit silently by? To guarantee that any upcoming board or levy request fail? To reopen a closed school? Your actions have yet to prove the truth of your words. Unfortunately, what voters have learned in hope in this district is that hope is our first step towards disappointment. Nearly every vote you make contradicts your campaign promises and your board stated goals. Every time you speak, your true agenda becomes clearer. There is no willingness to heal, as evident by your repetitive refusal of mediation. You were given an amazing gift when you were elected by the voters of this community. And we trusted you to help with actual healing and to establish forward-thinking direction for this district. But unfortunately, you continue to fail at every turn. And the biggest losers of all of this are the very ones you were elected to protect, our children. Thank you.
As Josiah comes forward, Beverly Petrie is after. Please.
I'm Josiah Hill. I live at 1124 Macy Way here in Stillwater. Thank you, Board Chair Potacek, Assistant Superintendent McDowell, and members of the board for this opportunity to briefly share a message this evening on behalf of the SCE Executive Board. At our monthly meeting last night, the SCEA Executive Board took formal action to share this message of support for our colleagues who took part in the secondary English language arts curriculum review process. Tonight, I serve as a messenger of the Executive Board, which consists of locally peer-elected representatives from every site at every level of this school district. Last night's resolution adopted by the Executive Board relate to the vote resulting in the failure to adopt the secondary ELA curriculum recommendation brought forth by our district colleagues at last week's board meeting here in this room. The teachers who took part in the ELA curriculum review process brought hundreds of years of collective experience to this work. They brought it directly from the point of contact delivery of content to our students in their classrooms every day. The SCEA Executive Board has been consistent in its ongoing decades-long effort to ensure that professional educator voice is included in the spaces where endeavors like this curriculum adoption are underway. This message of support continues our more than 40-year effort to advocate for teacher voice, to be not just included, but heard in important processes which have a far-reaching and long-term impact on our students and families. I'm proud to deliver this message supporting our talented and deeply invested district colleagues who went well above and far beyond their primary roles here, all in pursuit of a noble goal, ensuring our secondary students receive an educational experience that prepares each learner for to be successful in our dynamic and ever-changing world. Last night, SCEA colleagues at many levels of our organization expressed a deep concern that one significant consequence of failure to adopt this curriculum last week could lead to. It could be an erosion of confidence that these crucial curriculum review endeavors are a worthy investment of precious time and deep effort for our colleagues. If the countless valuable hours of effort are not regarded at the finish line and are dismissed at the end of an 18-month process, fears were expressed that some of our talented colleagues would choose not to participate in the future. In the end, the concern that was raised always was about our students and their ability to have access to high-quality curricula in every class. Thank you to our district-level staff for ensuring this process included detailed support and that it allowed at every step for a great deal of teacher voice in arriving at its recommendation. On behalf of our SCEA Executive Board, I say thank you to our colleagues who devoted their time and expertise to this important process. We see you, we hear you, we thank you, and we support you in this critically important work. Thank you.
Forward. Carl Blondin will be up next. Okay, thank you. Please.
Beverly Petrie, 1317 Broadway Street North, Stillwater. Board Chair Potacek, Assistant Superintendent McDowell, school board members. I am here about last week's school board meeting. To recap, a proposal to implement a new approach to literacy in the secondary schools failed on a 3-3 tie. District curriculum experts and teachers, some of the best in the district, researched current best practices and pilot tested the strategy they chose. Teachers testified about what a difference this program has made in their classrooms. The results were set before you in October, and yet the 3 people who voted no could not give a clear reason for discounting the work of the experts and the teachers. There are 2 main reasons why I am outraged. Number 1, you are not experts in curriculum. You heard from district curriculum experts who do this work full-time, and teachers who tried out these new methods on actual Stillwater students in their classes. I want to emphasize that this process took 30 people more than a year, from the point of exploring best practices in secondary literacy programs to pilot testing their chosen approach. In emails I've exchanged with school board members this week, no one has claimed any training or education in literacy curriculum for secondary students, and yet you clearly believe that your knowledge of the subject should allow you to overrule a proposal from people who actually do this for a living. Second, this is a textbook case of micromanaging. I'm familiar with the proper roles of boards and executive directors in the nonprofit world. Thanks to some research I did on the Minnesota School Boards Association site, I'm convinced that school boards are no different. And that means you guys are way outside your lane. The board's role is to set goals for the superintendent to accomplish. Let's say it sets a goal for student achievement. The superintendent then decides how to accomplish it with the educational tools at her disposal. That includes curriculum. As the education professional, she should have the prerogative to decide which curriculum is right to achieve the goal. If she doesn't meet the goal that you set, it is, of course, your prerogative to replace her. You will say that these issues come before you for oversight. Yes, financial oversight. You must know what is going on in the district, and as a taxpayer, I appreciate you doing this. But I'm just not sure where you get the idea that you should be second-guessing matters that are clearly outside your expertise. I've been involved in district matters for more than 2 decades. I've served on district-wide task forces. I've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for enrichment programs in the district. I helped get Da Vinci Fest started and have had a major role in managing it for more than a decade. I co-chaired a successful operating levy campaign in the mid-2000s and worked on several other levy campaigns, and I have never seen a school board this arrogant, this micromanaging, this willing to damage the brand of Stillwater Area Public Schools. The disdain you have shown to curriculum experts and the best and brightest of our teachers is unforgivable.
As Mr. Blondie comes forward, Jeff Holtz is up next.
Carl Blondin, Stillwater, Minnesota. Chairman Petacek, members of the board, Assistant Superintendent McDowell. Dr. Petacek, I'm growing very weary of the lawlessness of this board under your chairmanship. Instead of reining in inappropriate behavior from your political cronies, you only encourage it. Earlier this year, we learned that Director Stivland met with Superintendent Pontrelli and gave Mrs. Pontrelli an ultimatum to resign. Director Stivland spoke on behalf of the board. Prior to this ultimatum, there was no public meeting of your board to discuss the issue of Superintendent Pontrelli's tenure. If Director Stivland was truthful in the ultimatum she delivered to Superintendent Pontrelli, when did she discuss the issue of terminating Mrs. Pontrelli's employment with you and other board members? Or was Director Stivland lying about an important matter? Your silence and the silence of your colleagues in the face of Mrs. Stivland's remarkable and bold statement is a tacit admission the board majority illegally met and agreed that Mrs. Pontrelli's tenure should end. Either that or Mrs. Stivland lied when she pronounced the ultimatum. It is one or the other, sir. Which is it, and why do you tolerate either? Dr. Petacek, at the last board meeting, you stated that you had seen drafts of memoranda written by board members, which were then sent to district council and became the final memorandum that you issued at the last board meeting. The memorandum was not your attorney's idea. It was your request. It was a board project written by board members with some assistance from council. At the August 29th Finance and Operations Working Group, the Director of Finance suggested a work session to answer questions about the audit. But instead, 2.5 months later, we have the secretive drafting of an accusatory memorandum by you and your political cronies. Why is this? Why did you exclude Directors Pelletier and Burns from the drafting of the memorandum? Why did you choose to operate outside of public meetings, outside of your committee structure, in secrecy, and exclude some board members? And how in the world was this memorandum produced by 4 or 5 board members with some assistance from the district's attorney, with no notice to the public, done without violating Minnesota's open meeting law? Dr. Petacek, you are not chairing a board with committees. You are directing a cabal that shows no respect for rule of law and which, if it gets its way, will run this district into statutory operating debt.
Okay, Mr. Bondin, you have to end.
Thank you. Your lawlessness will not end well.
Okay, our next speaker is Jeff Holtz, and following Jeff will be Amy Cook.
Chair Petacci, board members, my name is Jeff Holtz. I reside in Elmo, and I am here to speak based upon participation in the community design team, along that person, Garth, back there. I serve with him too. Great guy. So, and Anita. And I want to first of all thank all of you for creating the community design team. You did so unanimously. You wanted to seek community feedback about our facilities. We have been tasked with creating a long-term vision for our facilities and how to get to that point through recommendations. The community design team is geographically diverse. It is professionally diverse. We have engineers, we have architects, we have city planners, we have teachers, we have principals, we have scientists, we have a wide array of professionals. We have been tasked with taking in objective data, whether it is enrollment data and projections, whether it is the input from principals about the conditions of their sites, whether it is our observations from site levels, from the specific school visits. We've been tasked to combine all that, sort through it, analyze it, and come up with ideas for our students who are sitting back there. In this process, we have been in randomly assigned tables. We have come up with ideas. We will come up with a report in January, but thus far, the clear consensus has been on 2 items: replacement of Lake Elmo and expansion of Brookview immediately. Now, is it unanimous? No. There's never anything that is unanimous, except we don't want to pay taxes. Other than that, there's nothing that is unanimous, and we want a Super Bowl win. But that ain't gonna happen probably. So if the variable you're looking for is unanimity, you're not gonna get it. If you're looking for a widespread consensus, you have it. You have a vote coming up next week to take care of that specific factor of a Brookview expansion. Please do what the data is showing. We are going to be 400 seats short in the southern end of the district within 5 years. It's only going to get worse. You can expand it by 8 classrooms that will result in 8 classrooms even after they rearrange who goes where. Your students deserve it. The taxpayers will support it. You asked for community feedback. We have provided it. And for anyone who has been to community design teams, you can say for certain the feedback has been widespread. There is support for this, so please do it for our students. We do look forward to working with you once the report is out to help you faithfully act upon our recommendations, but that's gonna be in January. The vote next week is for Brookview. Thank you.
Clarification I just want to make. Jeff, the vote is not next week, and the vote...
meeting.
And the vote is December 19th. So it's after the community design meeting.
Correct, but before our final report.
No, and I'm not just reacting to what you said. One of our prior speakers made that same error. And Amy, just before I do that, next speaker after Amy will be George Hepner.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Amy Cook. I teach 6th grade language arts at Oakland Middle School, and I live in Hudson, Wisconsin. Last week, I had the opportunity to address you, and I do appreciate that we were given that opportunity. I'm not going to restate the same information that I gave last week, but instead, I'm going to provide you with some feedback from my students. On Monday, this past Monday, we began a new bend in our curriculum, and a bend is like a subunit in the full unit. And the first lesson in this new bend was for students to reflect on their learning. And so I'd just like to share a few of those responses with you. And keep in mind, these are 10 and 11 and 12-year-old kids who are responding. But one student said, "I'm stronger at summarizing, jotting about character, and finding traits. I think I have gotten better at giving evidence for my character traits. I have learned a lot about looking at characters' less likable sides. I never thought about character traits and sides before. I also learned that some traits matter more than others because they can affect the plot of a story. I have learned about characterization and seeing characters in a different light. I have also learned to put this work into my own creative writing. Please honor the work that the students and the staff have been doing with this challenging yet very accessible curriculum that we have been using, and please honor this by providing the funds that we need to continue this work. Thank you.
Thank you. And as Mr. Hepner comes forward, following him will be Megan Sinks, I think it is. Okay, thanks, Megan.
George Hepner, Oak Park Heights. Last Friday morning, I received a couple calls asking me to check out the language arts presentation that had been made to the board the previous evening. As a high school English teacher for 36 years, I retain an interest in student literacy and was intrigued to watch that presentation. What I saw was a cadre of career educators with backgrounds in literacy and student learning advocating for a secondary language arts curriculum. What I gathered was that this committee had read the relevant research, visited with other metropolitan school districts, piloted the program they had chosen, a program that then received endorsement from both teachers and students, and they were now bringing to the board their recommendation to have this program implemented for all students in our secondary schools. While a board member noted that the recommendation should not be rubber stamped, that is not at all what I witnessed. What I saw instead were the district's literacy experts questioned by board members for an hour and a half. From my perspective, there were no flaws in the committee's process, their presentation, or the answers given. At that point, 3 board members voted no to the recommendation, and I was left to wonder, what would Lyman Geary, Tom Sherman, Harriet McPherson, Mary Ciccone, exceptional board members who previously rented your seats, what would they have done? Chair Potacek used to say that we have a lot of smart people in the community and we should listen to them. The board had numerous community experts in literacy in the boardroom last Thursday night. And in your usual passive-aggressive style, you praised them for their work, noted how much you trusted them, and then ignored their expertise. In a book titled Read-A-Side, with the subtitle, How Schools Are Killing Reading and What You Can Do About It, the author Kelly Gallagher said, if we want kids to become better readers, they have to read a lot more than they are currently reading. And if we want our students to do a lot more reading than they're currently doing, they need to be immersed in a pool of high-interest reading materials. Unfortunately, putting good books in front of our students has not been the focus in many of our nation's schools. Students in District 834 need interesting books in their hands, time to read, and an engaged teacher willing to talk to their students about that reading. The secondary curriculum proposed to you last week included all those elements. Because that curriculum is what currently constitutes best practice in reading, one would think it would have been enthusiastically supported. 4,500 district students and their teachers were counting on your support, and you let them down that night.
On deck is Amy Junko. Okay, thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Megan Sinks, and I've been a special education teacher in our district since 2005, and I was a member of the team that was here last week that spent the last year and a half reviewing the secondary ELA. I spent most of my career at Lake Elmo Elementary, where I received level run training in Orton Gillingham. I use those strategies every day teaching students with special needs the basic skills needed for reading and writing. I transitioned to Oakland Middle School in 2017 and have continued to use Orton Gillingham in my special education classrooms. I am a huge believer in the power of Orton Gillingham, the methodology, and how it supports reading instruction. But I also believe in the power of our multi-tiered systems of support that Stillwater area schools has that supports students that struggle. Those that need specialized and intensive instruction will get it as they travel through our systems. The curriculum that our secondary ELA team chose is by far the best option available for meeting the needs of our students. It allows for differentiation to engage all levels, up and down. As a co-teacher in a 6th grade ELA classroom piloting this program, I've seen its power and hope that you support the purchasing of materials to continue its development. I look forward to our ELA committee's continued work on finding a secondary word study component to meet the word attack needs of our secondary students. Thank you for your time and consideration of our curriculum.
Thank you. Comes forward. Following her will be Andrea Schuler. Please.
Good evening. My name is Amy Junko, and I am a special education teacher at Oakland Middle School. I also co-teach 2 sections of English 7. I will be honest when I tell you that I was highly skeptical of the concept of co-teaching when we were told 3 years ago that the district was moving in that direction for English and math. I was not convinced that throwing my special ed kids into a one-size-fits-all high school light class would be what was best for them. But I didn't have a choice. So my amazing co-teachers and I muddled through the year and made changes to the curriculum when we could. Then along came the workshop model and Lucy Calkins. What a difference. Even the most reluctant readers began showing interest in books. A few weeks ago, a young man told me he's never really liked reading, but he wanted to do better. I asked him to do me a favor and try reading 20 minutes a night. No reading log, no parent signatures, just read for 20 minutes. A few days later, as I walked past his desk, he said, "Hey, Ms. Junko, I read 40 minutes last night," and he broke into a huge grin. The pressure was off, and he read just because he wanted to. Some of you have expressed concerns about how we are meeting the needs of students who are not reading at grade level. As part of the pilot this year in 7th grade, we are using Words Their Way in our co-taught classes. It's a win-win for all students because this curriculum stretches from consonant, vowel, consonant words like cat all the way to effervescence. We're reinforcing phonics skills and building vocabularies at the same time, which in turn makes them all better readers and writers. For students who need more support, we have press groups for general ed students and special education reading services, which are both provided during the literacy portion of advisory, which we call Connections. My question to you is, because our new pilot curriculum was voted down last week, what is your expectation of us now? We were all left scratching our heads. So until we hear otherwise, my co-teachers and I will use the partial curriculum we have and continue to buy our own classroom books by ordering from Scholastic, picking through Goodwill bins, and snatching up discards from retiring teachers in order to get books into the hands of our no longer reluctant, but now eager readers. Thank you.
And as Andrea comes forward, our last speaker is Liz Krieger. Please.
Good evening, Chair Potacek and school board members. My name is Andrea Schuler-Valley, and I live on State Street in Bayport. Last week, on November 14, I watched from home as you failed to approve the secondary ELA curriculum proposal on a 3-3 vote. I went to bed that evening frustrated, concerned, and heartbroken, among other emotions. Tonight, I am here to ask you to reconsider this proposal that was on your action items list until 6:06 p.m. I could speak to you as an educator in this district who spent 18 months reading, learning, discussing, reviewing, and weighing options as part of the Curriculum Review Committee before this proposal came together. However, you heard the passion, expertise, and experience of many of my colleagues last week. What I have to say on this topic won't sway you if their eloquence didn't. Instead, I am here to address you as a district parent of a middle schooler and a soon-to-be middle schooler. As you know, curriculum adoptions happen only every 7 to 10 years. In 7.5 years, my role as a district parent will conclude with my younger son's graduation in 2027. That makes this the one chance my 2 sons have to get the materials they need for literacy. In fact, we can expect that nearly every one of our nearly 8,400 district students will be impacted by this proposal as secondary literacy learners over the course of the next 7 or so years. What might this impact look like? Maybe it will look like what I see in my home with my 7th grader, whose teacher is trying out the strategies proposed in this curriculum adoption. I see a boy who continues to love to read. I hear him tell me that English is currently his favorite class, a first for him to choose this subject. When I ask why, he tells me that he likes all the reading he does in school and that he finds the class interesting. He has read at least 6 books of his choice this school year and written more pages than he is willing to count, all in just 3 months. This doesn't even include his reading at home. Yes, he is one kid. As a parent, his parent, I am thrilled with his learning and progress. You will be delighted and intrigued when you make these upcoming classroom visits. Please recognize that the needs of our secondary learners are not the same as our early elementary learners when it comes to literacy. Our district experts followed a process and brought you a proposal that fits inside the extensive budget reductions to curriculum and professional development made last winter. My children and all our secondary learners deserve the opportunity to expand their reading, writing, speaking, and viewing skills with updated materials and strategies like those recommended in the ELA curriculum proposal. Please reconsider your decision.
Good evening. My name is Liz Krieger, and I have 2 special needs children in the 4th grade at Lake Elmo Elementary. Based on the temporary boundary plan, my kids would be moved for their last year of school. It begs the question for me, when you strip away the finances and the politics of the Brookview expansion, is anyone concerned about all the kids that would be forced to move to a new school? More importantly, what does the research show about multiple transitions during childhood? What does it do to the children's development and their mental health? My children have already moved once for boundary changes, and I'm concerned that they will be forced to move again because of the community needs and not our family needs. As a mother who has 1 child with multiple medical diagnoses, ataxia, apraxia, hard of hearing, and seizure disorders, and another son who experienced severe neglect in an institution for 6 years, I can tell you that the diagnoses that I have to manage the most with the both of them is their mental health. Change is hard for them. You can only imagine the amount of anxiety my son has due to his medical diagnosis. He works hard to hear, sit, run, write, and of course to talk. He has to trust that people will have the patience to try to understand him with his language disorder. Last year, school refusal had been a serious problem for us due to his anxiety. It is through the trusted relationships that he has built with teachers at Lake Elmo School that he now feels safe enough to attend school on a regular basis. He's thriving. Moving my son to a new elementary school will create this cycle of anxiety all over again. That will affect his learning and his development. It was not that long ago that some of you were in the exact same position that I am currently facing. You wanted your children's needs and concerns to be seen and heard. I ask you to please see my children and the effect that your decisions will have for them. It's a terrible feeling as a parent to have no control and power in your children's lives. In conclusion, my hope tonight is that you can see a little bit of yourself in me as a concerned parent who is hoping that you, the school board, will work on the behalf of my children. Even though we can't put a price tag on it, there definitely is a cost associated with change, and it's paid through our children's mental health. I respectfully ask each of you to consider voting yes to the expansion of Brookview for the stability and mental health of all our children.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that ends our open forum. Next, we have consent agenda, and it looks like we've got 7 items there. Can I get a motion to pass the consent agenda? Tina has moved. Is there a second? Sarah seconds. The consent items consist of minutes of the November 14th business meeting, minutes of the November 14th closed meeting, disbursement register November 16th through 22nd, accepting gifts and donations October 2019, a human resource personnel report, a system phone service upgrade, and last but not least, a field trip for 1 teacher advisor, 1 plus chaperone, and 35 students to travel to Columbia University, New York, March 17th through 23rd in 2020 to attend the Columbia Scholastic Press Association Convention. We've had a motion and we've had a second. All in favor signify by saying aye, please, and raise your right hand.
Aye.
Aye. And it passes unanimously. Going on to reports. The first, we have Community Design Team, Community Engagement Work Group, and Kathy Wallace is going to talk to us about the progress, I think, right?
Thank you, yes.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Kathy.
Thank you, Chair Potocnik and board members. Happy to be here to provide an update on the activities of the related to facility master planning. I'm going to take it in 2 parts. First, the planning process, and then second, some of the outcomes, I guess. We've had a lively set of 5 workshops so far. The purpose of the master planning is to co-create a clear and compelling vision for district facilities and to align the educational program and physical design with this vision. One tool for that is a master plan, and what it is a 10 to 15-year roadmap for the future grounded in your vision for learning. We're going to attempt to make it a living document that is not shelved and referenced only once. And master planning is one of the most responsible things you can do because it allows you to make shorter-term decisions with that long-term in mind. And it allows for logical implementation over time. One of the fundamental elements that is informing the master plan work is your strategic plan, portrait of the graduate, and your mission. The structure for decisions is shaped by this nice curvy diagram. The community design team is at the center there. They are carried through discussions and recommendations and feedback. They will provide a recommendation to the school board. There's a resource guides committee that includes board member and administration as well as the architects that is providing resources, providing guidance to that group in the process. As I mentioned, we've had 5 workshops, also tours, and I think that's it. The first 3 on this page, creating shared vision, design principles, information forum, facility standards, we'll cover some of the outcomes of those. And we've had 2 now discussions about a district-wide scenario. We initially had 1, but were asked to take a little more time to allow for some really robust discussion. I think it's been very helpful to bring out additional ideas and build some of the confidence that you heard earlier in what the results may be. The remaining workshops include 6 and 7, where we will have an opportunity to bring some costing, a look at how the different ideas come together, and ideas about phasing for discussion before finalization of recommendation to the board. Schedule, next workshop is the 17th of December. This is our complicated diagram showing that it's not just the blue workshops across the top, it's also all the activities behind it. So what's been discussed? We started out in the first workshop looking at some of the context for schools and what they're doing, what facilities are, in terms of what we call forces of change. This informed the discussion then about, actually not quite yet, we also talked about preconceptions or beliefs that the group might be constrained by, and keeping those in mind as we're doing work so that they can move beyond standard limitations of typical constraints that do exist, that are real, like money and federal directives, but also constraints that may be self-imposed, fear, we've always done it this way, belief that, that there's no way to get to a common ground. We'll continue to remind the group that they can work above and beyond these. So the framework that's arisen out of the first, mostly out of the first 3 workshops, was a vision, principles, and standards. And the vision, I am going to read it because the group that prepared it did a really good job, includes students as well as other adults. The vision is to enhance the dreams and aspirations of our students, teachers, and community in building an innovative, diverse, inclusive, flexible, accessible, collaborative, and sustainable future for all. They also had secondary statements that build on this regarding environmentally friendly places that are community assets, fiscally sustainable and efficient learning centers, learner-centered, community-driven, safe, flexible, and environmentally rich space for all students, teachers, and community, space that encourages and supports multiple viewpoints and identities, spaces that support all students, and progressive environments that promote community engagement. From the vision statement, the group then worked to create principles, which are in some ways like values, overarching beliefs and commitments to what's important. And those fell in the categories of community, collaboration, innovation, student focus, engagement, sustainability, equitable and diverse facilities, flexibility, and support. These are all available on the webpage. We also went on from that to refine a group of standards that define consistency, value, and quality, basically ways to make sure you have a way of judging across all your buildings in the zones of buildings, interiors and finishes, systems, site, community offsite. And those include everything from basic learning space to community support areas, clear main entry, flexible, adaptable space, technology, safety, and connections between school sites. The principals then were given a survey so that they could rate their existing buildings compared to those facility standards. And what you can see is the green, by the way, is meets standards. The red is doesn't meet standards, and yellow is workable, not meeting all the standards, but not meeting them fully. And as you look across the columns, you see a variety of colors because you have a couple new buildings, the Early Childhood Family Center and Brookview Elementary, that are much closer to meeting all the standards than some of the older buildings, and Lake Elmo is the standout there. This was part of the background that led the group to draw some conclusions, like it would be a good idea to replace Lake Elmo. We have also gap analysis reports for the other buildings. And the red on the far left is the transition space at Oak Park. The group also, on their own time, toured many of the buildings. I should say many of the group members volunteered to tour buildings, and we got some good observations shared with the entire community design team from those tours. We also had a presentation by the administration on programming, educational programming, and related ties to the buildings, and demographics and enrollment projections. And that fed into the work to create district-wide scenarios. I see some nods from people who have been part of those discussions. So we looked at where the students are using graphics from the demographic report update, just to give a sense for people thinking about where schools might be and which schools needed help, just to give a read, both where the students are now and also where the potential enrollment growth is based on new and future developments. And then we asked, how will you align enrollment growth, district facility resources, and possible facility improvements in the context of the vision, principles, and standards? And what we got was quite a bit of different scenarios, but a lot of agreement. And the common ground from that includes, as you heard earlier, all tables recommending replacing, moving, and or selling Lake Elmo Elementary, and 8 tables recommending expanding Brookview. Also had a good deal of agreement on using the Oak Park building more fully to meet district needs, including relocating either ALC or keeping transition at Oak Park, and possibly relocating central services to the Oak Park building. Other possibilities with transition, such as moving it to central services building. Interest in expanding Anderson to make that to get closer to a full 3-section school there. Retaining dual immersion at in the south side or at Lake Elmo, associated with Lake Elmo, because the students are located in that general area. Renovating all the buildings to a 21st century learning standards. Building a new elementary to meet enrollment needs, and either an additional early childhood family education center or additional preschool sections to meet needs for early learners. Number of tables recommended selling with row. And some of the outliers included some interesting ones, such as building a new middle school so that the Oakland site could be used instead of building a new elementary school. I'm not going to read all of these. Some interest in possibly relocating the GATE program, a career and tech center at the Oak Park building for an alternative high school path. And for example, considering larger elementary schools if those might contribute to a more efficient outcome. Finally, the option to use Oak Park as an elementary school, either with or without some of the other programs. So I've not reported on the outcomes of the last meeting because we haven't had a chance to process those fully yet, but there was again support for, there was reinforcement of many of these ideas, both the outliers and the more common ground, including about 70% people saying that they believed Brookview should be added to. Our next step is to, as mentioned in the list of workshops, to create, our next step will be to create some schemes that can have costing associated with them so that we have more information to provide to the group the next time we meet. There's also a proposal to the board to have an additional workshop to get more opportunities for looking at the site-specific, potential site-specific improvement strategies. We talked about site-specific improvements in general terms, but haven't had a chance to look at what each building might call for in its inherent characteristics. If that, we believe that could help to continue to develop the group's recommendation, strong recommendation to the board, and it's up to you to consider it. So, Any
Kathy,
questions?
you got time for questions or comments?
Sure.
Okay. Board members, Jen.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to make sure that I have this percentage correct, because there's been a bit of a variety of narrative around regarding Brookview and the percentage of people who in the committee who want to expand it and not. So I've heard some are saying 40, 50%, and I'm getting emails about it and concerned residents. So I just want to ask you, did I hear you correctly that 70% of the group supports expanding Brookview? Is that accurate as to what you stated?
That's what I said, yes, and that's based on a visual survey. People raised their hands, and then second group raised their hands if they were not in favor of expanding Brookview, and that group was much smaller.
So you would say it's not 40% or 50%?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Mark?
Just a question about, there are a couple of things that are bubbling to the top that most people are in agreement of, but then there's kind of a long tail of other ideas. What is the process for coming to consensus on some of those ideas?
It'll be a process, and it will involve some additional discussions. What we'll probably do is bring a core proposal of a district-wide scenario and some additional options, and we'll work with the group to see what rises. In addition, we identified a couple items that needed some more information. I think the group felt that they did not have enough expertise to know what the best locations might be for the transition program or ALC, and so they've asked for some additional input on that.
And Kathy, it seemed to me last night in particular when I was there that although it wasn't identified, remember what got missed was Oak Park, and in particular, I think there was very strong consensus that was expressed, but it didn't make the charts. So when actually participants were asked to go up and put stars up there, they didn't have that choice. But I think the point is there were a lot of different proposals for what to do with Oak Park, but I think generally everybody said you got to utilize it.
I think that's fair to say that all of the schemes proposed using Oak Park in some way, and I did have a chance to ask the group that was supposed to at least initially report on what their recommendation was for Oak Park, and they said that improvements would be entirely dependent, what improvements should be there would be entirely dependent on what programs were chosen to be there, and so that's the first decision that needs to be agreed on.
Thank you. Liz?
Thank you. And you were just saying that you're getting more information on transition and ALC, and in addition to getting information on that, we received an email from a member of the team that said that first of all she appreciated there was less of an administrative presence, that she thought there was a freer flow of ideas at the last meeting, so that was a positive, but that some of the information that was floating around said Marine and Withrow had 9 kids per class when they were closed, that they were half full. So I hope that they're getting accurate information, because those are statements that if that type of information is going around, that's not a true scenario.
I certainly didn't hear that, and I don't think any of our team has reported on anything about the enrollment at Withrow or was it
I don't know
school?
what table this person
Marine.
was, but said that was floated around. So I just wanted to be sure that people were getting accurate information.
Okay. We haven't had any discussions about that.
Yeah, I don't think that we had any discussion about Withrow and like the amount of students there. Maybe it did happen at the small groups, but definitely not in the big group discussions. And I was only there for half, but Elise can vouch for that too.
Good, thank you.
Yeah. I think one other thing, I liked how you laid out the tables and went from the largest number to the smaller. The one point, though, that I think is significant is you really can't assume that each table was unanimous.
Correct.
In other words, sometimes it was, I think probably, although I was only at one table, so I can't tell you what happened at other tables, but I knew other discussions. And in some cases, the people who presented hopefully tried to pick up what was the strongest points that were put forward. So I don't debate that other part, but it's not accurate to say each table was unanimous, because I don't think that was the case.
Good point.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I take that, Chair, as the 30%, with the Brookview, that would be an example of it. The part that is not unanimous, not unanimous. And I did have a question about Brookview, and this is two different stories, and I just want to make sure that I have an accurate assessment of this. So when you were discussing the addition to Brookview, I heard two different things, so I just want to make sure I'm crystal clear on this. So the recommendation is that it's feasible to have it 100 to 150 students, and that is not feasible to have it up to 800 students, because that would kind of change the dynamic of the building, the spaces that were made in the cafeteria, the common spaces. So I just wanted to make crystal clear that, or if you could just help me understand or make sure that I have this accurate, that the recommendation for Brookview would be like around 100 to 150 students, and that would not need any kind of extra work on those created spaces. That has always been my interpretation, so I just wanted to make sure that's accurate.
I have to say, we have not studied Brookview in terms of what its core is able to handle. We have been told that it was designed for an addition of, I think, 6 classrooms, eight additional classrooms. Thanks. That's what we've been told. So I can't tell you other than that it was designed for an addition.
That's great. I heard that quite a bit at the meeting from people who attended, so just want to make sure. Thank you.
Mark?
Well, and I think at the meeting, there were some different ideas that were shared about the extent to which Brookview could be expanded. We have not yet gotten into a discussion of the capacities and capabilities of that building. But because I think there were a variety of discussions about, we heard the number expanded to 800. We heard expanded to 650. People have had different ideas, but there hasn't been a direction from Cunningham as to, and we haven't gotten into that discussion yet.
Sorry, I was just going to say, Director Hoheisel, we're limited in what we can add on anyway, right? We can only add those 8 classrooms.
Yeah, we'd be looking at those 8 classrooms, which the common spaces can accommodate up to those 8 classrooms. The building was designed that way. Anything beyond that, I would think our footprint that is already in existence, along with the city code, could be preventative.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sarah, I think my observation was this, so if everybody kind of knows this, I think common ground, Jen, and it would give a little better picture visually. The first table that reported, the one that bubbled up, that I think there was almost unanimous, although you can't see the whole room from where I was, is Lake Elmo needs to redo. And that was pretty clear cut. I think the second one that was paired originally with that was add-on to Brookview. I don't think and it was a show of hands. And again, I'm saying where I'm sitting, I come up with a slightly different estimate, but I haven't shared it with many people, but it was not unanimous. It wasn't, they had an awful lot of support, but it wasn't similar.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. It seems to me that the only thing that we can say for certain right now, based on the experiences I've seen, is that it is absolutely, emphatically unanimous that we need to replace Lake Elmo as a building. Now, the question of whether we do that on the site exists where it exists or it's in a different location, there's still a lot of questions that need to be worked out. And I think at one point when we were discussing, you guys can verify, jump in, right? Yeah. One time when we were discussing this, people just erupted in clapping and cheering because I know just from talking to people who were in the last time we went through a long-term facilities process, Lake Elmo was seriously considered at that time, and then for some reason, nothing significant happened there, and maybe they did do some work on the special ed areas and stuff like that, but now it seems very clear that everyone is in support of, something significant happening for Lake Elmo. But I think the question that maybe is making Brookview a little bit less of a unanimous thing is the question of the growth. And, I think a lot of people do support the idea of a Brookview expansion, but then I'm also hearing a lot of people talking about the need for another elementary school in the south. And so the question is, we need to flesh out what is the actual need, what do we expect, and maybe what kind of phasing is needed. And so that's just kind of what I'm hearing from the tables that, people are saying. So it's just a little bit less of a unanimous decision there.
Yeah. Shelley?
Which I think is the point to why we're waiting till December 19th to make that decision, so that you have one more chance to get the group together, see where everybody's at, and then maybe we'll have a clear chance of where the group is at.
Yeah, I think it's important, and Kristen can help me out with this one. Even the last bond issue, which was 2015, had money that did end up going to improve the facilities at Lake Elmo. And it was, I believe, $1 to $2 million that was put into that building. So it's easy sometimes to look back and say, you should have done this or you should have done more, and that's fair. But I don't want you to get the impression nothing was done there, because that's not true.
You're right.
And I don't mean on you. I've heard other people
yeah.
say that.
Yeah.
And so that's not pointed at you. It's just that. And the same thing was done at Oakland to provide for special ed kids who were going to be there in subsequent years. So several $1 million went to Oakland at that time. Junior high ended up being middle school. So.
Yeah, just a really quick one. Sarah, you and I maybe have a different impression on that idea of how many people have been talking about multiple new buildings in Lake Elmo. I think we'll have to see what the community design team comes up with, but I maybe haven't heard the same thing that you have there on that one.
Well, I'm not saying it was a strong, I'm just saying I heard it.
It was out there?
Yeah, it's out there.
Sure.
Sorry. You mentioned the idea of possibly adding another meeting for the site-specific questions. Mm-hmm. Is that something that that you need something from us? Or can you talk a little bit more about what the thinking is on that? Because I think it's a good idea.
Okay. The thinking on that is we often like to do an exercise where people get a chance to consider the ideal neighborhood or the ideal learning setting, and that informs the discussions around improvements at each school in a way that touring may not be able to do. And we have provided examples of remodeling projects for people to be inspired by, and so we feel that the group has had a chance to have some basis for thinking about what could happen at schools. But that is if we had an additional workshop, we would be able to take it that next step. And since this is about building common ground, because we're not sure you'll ever get to full consensus,
Yeah.
More time spent together could be good.
Yeah. And one more thing. Is that okay?
Come on.
Let me take Tina first.
I'm just kind of curious. Do we have an estimate as to how many of the community design team have actually went on the tours?
I attended one tour, the last tour, and my colleagues attended the others, so I don't know if anybody else has an estimate.
I was at every tour, and from start to finish, and I would say generally about 30. As the night went on, it tended to get a little smaller. But don't forget, some of those started at 5 o'clock and it ended at 10. So that's understandable. And some of the people weren't part of the team either. We picked up some people, which was wonderful. Mm-hmm. And the principals did a great job in walking us through that. Shelley?
Thank you. Getting back to the possible additional meeting. So at this point, is it to not have the site-specific And to jump ahead to the next one, is that?
That's correct.
Because we won't have another meeting between now and then in order to approve the additional meeting. So it seems like site-specific would normally be the next step. I think from your calendar, that should be the next workshop.
That's correct, although we are prepared to make some adjustments.
Okay.
Jen?
Thanks. I guess I'm just wondering if, and I don't really know who to ask, but what is it going to take information-wise for us to be able to make a decision on this and feel good about it? I don't know that, I'm trying to think of what percentage will make us feel good about it. 90% or 70% or the community survey. And I don't know, Kathy, if that's, what you typically do in your other projects in your communities. Do you go by like how do you work with the percentages that will make people happy and feel comfortable making a vote?
That's usually not our decision. We generally do take a as we have a chance to get a recommendation fully developed, there is usually agreement by the group on the recommendation.
On the recommendation made by the community design team?
That the community design team agrees on the recommendation and then brings it forward.
Has the community design team agreed that about 70%, because this vote's, it's on my mind because it's coming up, so I don't mean to continue to drive it, but has the community design team agreed, do you believe that with the 70% assessment that, I hear 90%, I hear a wide variety of percentages of people, and the voices matter, so I'm trying to get a feel in this moment in time, what percentage do we need to hear,
I can't tell you what percentage you need to hear. Usually a strong majority is a way that we look at common ground. And we would consider a strong majority as being common ground, typically.
And typically 8 out of 9 tables, would you consider that a pretty solid?
We would, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sir?
I just wanted to clarify that the decision that's upcoming is not a decision of whether or not to add on to Brookview as much as it is a decision about how to pay for it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We have options. One is to use a certificate of participation, which requires a lease levy that's not voter approved, it's board approved. And that's what we have as an opportunity now. We would also consider possibly adding it as part of a bond that would come at a later date that we would put in front of the community for a vote. And we could still do the addition in that way and pay for it with a voter approved bond. And so I think, to me, that's the question. It's not really the question of whether or not to add on to Brookview, it's the question of how to pay for it in the context of everything else that we're doing in the district. Right?
I just think it changes a lot, so okay, thank you.
Well, that is the decision in December, is whether or not to use a certificate of participation, so.
Okay, I think we've got.
And I was just, I'm sorry. One thing I wanted to say.
It's getting a little long.
Yeah.
So.
I wanted to reiterate, one of the people spoke at Open Forum, talked very highly about all of the members of the community design team, and I wanted to reiterate that and to publicly say thank you at this point. It has been a lot of time. It has been a huge commitment, and I've been completely impressed every single time with the level of discourse and the conversation and the real passion that people are bringing to this process. It's really quite impressive and inspiring. And your leadership as well. So thank you.
Thank you. We're very pleased to have so many students attend.
Yes.
Well, and thank you for coming tonight and giving us an update.
Thank you.
Mark,
Thank you so much.
typically does that, but I think you covered it pretty well.
Thanks, Kathy.
All right.
Thank you. And our next report is on program and course changes. Rachel Larson.
Good evening, Board Chair Potacek, Assistant Superintendent McDowell, members of the board. Every year, teachers, departments, curriculum teams, administrators, and members from the Learning and Innovation Department are provided an opportunity to submit course approval forms through the Curriculum Advisory Council. This may include course additions, revisions, and deletions. Prior to submission to the Curriculum Advisory Council, proposals must be supported by the building administrator, Learning and Innovation Department directors, and the assistant superintendent. On November 12, 2019, the Curriculum Advisory Council, comprised of students, parents, community members, teachers, administrators, and members of the Learning and Innovation Department, approved that the following changes for the 2020-2021 school year be brought forward for your action and approval. French Intermediate 1 and 2, College in the Schools. With this course, students will be provided the opportunity to take this course through the University of Minnesota College in the Schools program. After successfully completing this course, students will receive college credit. This course would replace AP French Language and Culture course currently offered at the high school. This university-level course emphasizes proficiency, comprehensible input, and higher-level communicative strategies. Sports and Society. This elective psychology course will provide students with an understanding of the sports industry and the broader economic, political, environmental, cultural, and social systems that apply to the world of sports. Cognitive skills focus on increasing student understanding of and ability to evaluate multiple perspectives on social and cultural change and to assess the strengths and weaknesses of conflicting points of view. This course will replace Psychology B. This is a report for action, and action will be requested at the December 12th school board meeting. And at this time, I'll take any questions that you have.
Go ahead. I have one question. If, with regard to the French class, the college in the schools, my understanding is that if the student successfully completes the course and maybe achieves a certain grade in the course, that they would receive college credit. Where is that college credit applicable to? Is it beyond the University of Minnesota system?
It is.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons why the teachers in the department brought this forward, is that they're finding that the AP French credit is not being accepted at the University of Minnesota, sometimes the University of Wisconsin, and this would. And it would guarantee the college credit with successful completion of the course.
Yeah. And I've had some experience with this, and the way they describe it is this, and I'm saying, please validate this. And even if it didn't, I wouldn't vote against this, but it's good to know. They have what they call transcripted credit. And what that means is you get a transcript from the University of Minnesota that says it's their credits. Now, it's still, even with AP courses, what Wisconsin or Iowa or anybody else, whether you recognize it, but you should be treated the same way as if you had taken it on the Minnesota campus.
Correct.
And so that is important, because sometimes what you run into with college credit, it's only good at that institution.
Correct. And the College in the Schools course through the University of Minnesota requires that instructors have a master's level degree in that content area. And so we have teachers that are able to fulfill this and teach that course.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Look forward to that next meeting.
Thank you.
Moving right along, and this is a biggie, is 2019 district enrollment report, and Kristen's going to give us some insights on this.
Good evening, Board Chair Potacek, Assistant Superintendent McDowell, and school board members. Thank you for the opportunity to present the district enrollment information 1920. I would like to say, I know there's very few reports that I probably give where people are really anxious to receive the information, and this seems to be the one, and for good reason, quite honestly, because there is just a significant amount of detail that goes into this report. With that said, given this significance of the detail, it takes a little bit for us to compile based off of October 1st numbers. So I appreciate the understanding of why it takes until November for us to have this data ready. There are 2 slides as part of the presentation, but there is a significant amount of backup documentation behind it. That information is attached to the agenda on the web page, and it will actually be posted as its separate report tomorrow morning once the school board has had the opportunity to discuss it tonight. So I'd like to just highlight a few of the trends. Is the first slide. We do have a slight decrease in the number of non-resident students open enrolling into our schools this year compared to last. Last year it was 345 students open enrolling, and this year it is 329, 16 students lower. What I would like to point out here is the number is slightly deceptive. We did have people and I would say a large number. When I say a large number, certainly more than a dozen on a wait list trying to get into Brookview. Same with Lake Elmo. We don't have space at those buildings. So it's not for the lack of people wanting to come here. Sometimes it's the ability to serve them in which the building they want to attend. We have a slight increase in the number of students leaving our district to other public schools. However, we continue to be lower than the peak of 2014 and 15. So last year, we had 558 students that left to other public schools, and this year we have 568. So 10 more students chose another public school this year. However, in 2014 and 15, that number was 621. The number of students choosing private schools has declined. Last year it was 853. This year it's 844. That's 9 students lower. The homeschool population has declined. Last year it was 330. This year it's 273. This is our largest differential of all of our categories. It dropped by 57 students. The number of students attending charter schools peaked in 2017-18 and has continued to decrease since. So last year, the number of students choosing charters was 1,286. This year, it's 1,255, which is 31 students lower. The peak in 17-18 was 1,365. So if you take the peak and where we are today, we've actually gained 110 students back over 2 years. My office also keeps track of significant events, like over the course of 30 years, buildings closed, buildings open, new high school built, charter schools opening. The significant event, we actually had 2 of them in 17-18 that I'm sure influenced that number, was the opening of River Grove as a charter school, and then the closing of our 3 elementary schools. And again, gaining back 110 students over 2 years, there's essentially a 40 student, we're down to the net loss over the course of a few years of being 40 kids, and with a new charter school, I think that's saying that we're doing pretty well. Our overall market share has continued to increase and is now at the 2016-2017 level. When digging just a little bit deeper, the positive findings, our October 1 enrollment is 36 students higher than our K-12 budget projection. We have a slight increase in market share. You can see the difference is 72.1 to 72.6. Decrease of 31 students choosing the charter school. All of this was mentioned. And here's a couple of trends that we like. 80% of eligible kindergarten students are choosing our school, and 83% of preschool students that have stayed in Stillwater schools as kindergartners. I know we've looked at or are starting to see, we've always said if they're in preschool in our district, they tend to stay. And I believe the trend is the longer that we have those preschool options, actually the number of eligible kids increase too. It's like what we're doing it's not just the kids that are attending there, it's just more attractive. There's more familiarity with our buildings, and so our eligible kindergarten students are also seeming to go higher. And I have to note, this really has, other than pointing out that little cutie patootie that's in the picture there, I happened to catch that the class of 2032 is on her shirt, and I just about cried because I thought, oh my goodness, how long have we been doing this? Anyway, that has nothing to do with anything other than that you have those pause and aha moments. I had mine, I gotta be honest with you.
So I will open it up to any questions. I believe, like I say, the full report is available to the public in the agenda tonight. I believe the board has been provided the full report, so I'll answer any questions now.
Liz?
You said that Brookview and Lake Elmo both had waiting lists. Do we have waiting lists at any of our other?
Yeah, so I will, and this is coming, that was for open enrollment specifically, Liz.
Okay.
And that for certain I know. I do know that there were a few other schools that we had waiting lists, but I believe those were students that were choosing alternate. So it wasn't a wait list per se, it was to the point of kids wanting to come into our district. And the high school. The high school would also have an open enrollment wait list as well. Maybe Oakland, but I don't think so. I don't think either of our middle schools, they might have been transfers between, but I don't think we had open enrollment people wanting to get in there. And then I think of the other schools, and there might be one student, but there's nothing of significant recall. Those were the significant buildings, whereas Brookview, Lake Elmo, and the high school.
Okay. Shelley, I think, was next, and then we'll go with Jen.
Thank you, Kristen. I'm looking at, I think it says page 22 in the packet, the percent of eligible kindergarten attending 834, and it has the colored staggering that goes down. So a lot of times we're given a number that kind of is alarming, that our kindergarten classes are lower than our graduating classes, but aren't they almost always lower? Because it looks like from these that we always grow as we go, because we capture kids back in maybe in 6th grade and then in 9th grade. That the number is maybe has never been exactly. It's not been the same because we capture kids back.
That would be, right? I mean, that assessment is fair. That's a fair assessment. We inevitably have, wherever we have changes, grade level changes is when we, kids now coming into the middle school into 6th grade, 9th grade. Usually those are kind of our benchmark years where we're going to certainly draw more kids than maybe would have started with us. Once you establish, and you can see this, kind of once you establish a cohort starting in kindergarten, those kids kind of stay pretty equal and fluid until we start hitting demarcations, like I say, a grade level change of some sort of building level change. So that's very true. Demographically speaking, demographers will say the birth rate just doesn't exist like it. So there is an element of that too. People just aren't having kids like they used to have kids. Our population is aging. So there is an element of that, but you're correct in saying where our kindergarten class starts should not be what we expect by the time they hit 10th grade.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Jen.
Thanks, Mike. Slight increase in the number of students leaving our district for other public schools this year. However, we continue to be lower than the peak. Are we still, I feel like I remember one of the previous reports that we were talking about doing kind of exit interviews with families. Have we done that with some of these families, or where do we stand with that?
Yes, we do conduct an exit survey. We send out to families when we are notified that they're leaving. At this point, it's an optional. We just email it out, and people have their ability to respond, and we do get some responses. So we look at those, and we can certainly share results back with you. We don't capture everybody doing it this way. We've had some conversation about maybe better ways to try to capture that information, but for now, we are capturing what we can through those exit interviews. A lot of times, I will say, just in what I've looked at, a lot of it is about people moving. That's a big piece of the feedback we get is that. There's also occasionally something with, a need not being met, or we have some kids that are in a foster care situation or some sort of, just shifting home situation that causes them to move. So that's a lot of the feedback we're getting.
Okay, thank you.
Tina.
Do we know, I'm just curious, where the Anderson 24 neighborhood is? Did that used to be an Oak Park boundary, or?
Honestly, I'm trying to picture the map in
Yeah,
my head right
I'm
now.
almost sure. I remember those discussions, and I think it came from Oak Park.
It is an Oak Park boundary.
I am going to hold. I'm going to hold my answer because
come back to it.
Do you have the map, Bob, pulled up?
I can remember the discussion.
So you're asking if 24 was the former Oak Park boundary?
Yeah.
I'm trying to see where the line of 36 is. I can say like the Holiday Station, Brecky, those neighborhoods were Oak Park.
Okay.
The Brecky Park area, I'm trying to see the road. 36, so that would, if 36 is right at the top of the attendance area of 24, that would be correct then.
Thank you.
Yeah. Kristen, one of the things you remembered, or rather that you commented on, was events that seemed to have an impact. I'm wondering, with the completion of the addition at the high school, did that have a notable impact on the high school, picking up kids?
Well, if we...
I mean, if we look at that and try to superimpose that in the figures, and you'd have to go just to the later sheets in here.
You would. What I would do is I might, I might look across, and it would be the colored sheet that Shelley had referenced earlier.
Yes.
If I were to try to parse that out, I might start looking at, prior to the grade configuration change, what is your ninth grade, like the trajectory of 8th grade as it moves into 9th grade, and then 9th grade as it moves into the high school at that time, versus now the trajectory of, 7th grade to 8th grade, and then into the high school.
See, because what I remember at the time when it opened, it seemed like anecdotally, and I'm wondering if the figures bear that out, that we picked up in what would have been 10th through 12th kids, or 10th through 12th grade kids who were attracted by the facility.
We did. If you look at just in a quick assessment of these numbers, I'm looking back to, 14, let's go 14, 15. And if you take the 8th grade class, the number 650, then you move to 685, and then they would have jumped to the high school at 706. And you can kind of go a couple classes, you can see about maybe like a 20 kid jump going to the high school at that time, where since the grade configuration change, we're going, 634, 650, 665, 673 to 711. It seems like we're gaining more momentum with the high school being in 9th grade. It appears that way at a very quick analysis.
Yeah, and at first blush, I'm saying 20 students doesn't seem that significant, although you and I know that represents about 10,000 per kid.
Well, it does, and it does that for the course of 4 years.
Yeah. So it's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mark?
So I'm looking at the District 834 enrollment chart as of the October numbers, and you may not know the answer to this, but I'm looking at the numbers at Brookview. We have the 5th grade class currently has 70. The kindergarten class has 95. Obviously, that's going to be a difference when we move up. Do we have visibility, or when will we have visibility on what the incoming kindergarten class will be at Brookview?
Segue, Bob.
We do. And we happen to have Mark Drummerhausen in the house, and so I'm also going to...
We have preliminary numbers now. At the top of my head, it's low 92, 95 names on the list right now. We're actually going through the process right now, identifying each kid of, do they have siblings currently in our building? Are they attending our preschool? And then kind of seeing who's where, and then contacting the rest of the families to get those numbers. But I want to say low 90s off the top of my head right now as we sit for next year. Of the available list. Now, some may choose to hold back, some may choose to go to different schools, but that's where the list sits today.
Okay, thank you.
So some of those are alternate enrollment?
Those are the low 90s of the number of kids in our boundaries as of today. Now, some may choose to go to Afton Lakeland or to Lake Elmo.
But they're in Brookview boundaries? Okay,
Correct.
That's the question.
That doesn't include anybody wanting to alternate in.
Okay, thank you.
And I would have supported from the enrollment office that I'm not necessarily watching those numbers like Mark is right now for his kindergarten orientation. That said, as we've been planful and we'll move into the staffing, I would concur that he's pretty good with the 90 plus is what I would have also assumed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? The more time you spend looking at these figures, there's a lot in here. And it's very intriguing, and also can capture your attention for a while, but I appreciate, because like you said, this is one of our best-selling reports.
Without question.
And
Without-
people are anxious to see it and know it. The last question I have is on page 21 of the report. And as I went down the list, residents attending, et cetera, I came down to about the fourth one, and it said, because to me, homeschooling is pretty level, especially when you look at the percent. But then they've got students enrolled in other public schools. You don't count that twice. What are other public schools? What would be examples of that?
Montemita, South Wash.
Oh, okay, other district public schools.
Mhm.
Gotcha. Now I know, okay. Because I view charter schools as other public schools.
They are, but we specifically call out the charters. Those are within,
Gotcha.
and then anything beyond the charters, that would have to be obviously outside. Then that's why we try to hit anything within our attendance area. That's why you see the charter, and you see the non-pubs and the homeschool. It's like that's everything that's happening within our boundaries. And then when it says other, that's what's going on as we move beyond our boundaries.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any others? Well, thank you very, very much for that. And as always, it's very intriguing. Let's go on to a report on the second reading of Policy 722, Public Data Request Policy Working Group.
Okay, I guess that's me. If any of the policy working group members want to weigh in, I'll get us started. This is the public data request policy. We had a first reading quite some time ago, and we had some feedback from the community, I think actually, and a board member. And so we went back in and looked at it again. We made some additional changes. And so now we are bringing it back for a second reading. If anybody has any comments, now's your chance.
I was just gonna, have we had any residents, family members email you about these policies?
We have had quite some discussion. We've done a little bit of research, just checking with MSBA and just checking into things. And I think there was a couple conversations with legal counsel. And so, yeah, there's been some exploration of the ideas that are in here. Right now, what it is the blue is what we originally had in here for changes from the original document. And then anything in here that's red is now added since the first reading.
Okay, thank you.
So I don't know, I guess I could point out there's a section 6, which is district procedures for inspection of public data. That has been added since then. And another thing we did, I think we changed that, we moved the definitions from the definitions were near the beginning of the policy. We've moved them to the end now just because I think we just decided it reads better that way. But we really didn't change them.
Okay.
Very much.
Seeing no other questions, can we go to Policy 401?
Okay.
Equal Opportunity Employment.
All right, and 401 is one that I introduced to you at our last meeting for the first reading. This is a pretty basic, straightforward policy. It's equal opportunity employment. When we approve this policy, we'll be essentially changing the number and title of the old policy was SR 1.9, and parts of it was also in R 1.3.1, and now it will be a policy 401. This is pretty much MSBA, except for we've customized it to our district.
Okay. Any questions? Again, by the way, the policy committee is to my right. Mark
I didn't even realize that.
And Sarah.
Yep.
Okay.
So if you want to take a look at this, if anyone in the community has questions or concerns about it, feel free to give us an email and we will take a look at it again. But other than that.
Okay, let's go on to 402, disability non-discrimination.
Okay, this will be policy 402. disability non-discrimination. Again, I think these are all policies that are mandatory. We're sort of required to have them by state law. And again, we'll be changing the name, sort of the number configuration as we're going through and trying to align with more completely with the way the MSCPA policies are aligned. It's just a little bit easier to follow along what they are. This is pretty much MSBA. It's really in line with the statute, and we've just customized it for our district.
Okay, and thank you. This is oftentimes very tedious, unrewarded work, and
but necessary.
Exactly. So thank you all for that. And for the public to know, that goes next to an action item to be voted on at the next board meeting.
Right.
Now, what we're going to do is we're going to move to action items, and we're going to take a look at the sale of bonds, and Matt has been sitting out there very patiently waiting. And then after we get that action, we will take a brief recess. So if you're anxious to get up and stretch or whatever, give us a few more minutes. So let's go to action item, adopt, awarding, ratifying resolution for sales of bonds. And Kristen, if you would like to introduce Matt, and if you want to give some background, that's up to you, however you want to handle it.
I am happy to introduce Matt. Matt Rantapa, R.W. Baird, is with us tonight. We have been having conversations about refunding a former COP 2011 series, and it was talked about. We started at a finance committee meeting and worked our way as far as what is projected savings at that time of, and I don't want to take Matt's thunder away, but about $650,000. Through a series of meetings, the board approved anything of a savings of over $500,000. And so I think Matt has some good news that he'd like to share with you, so I'll ask him to come up and give the presentation.
Thank you, Kristen. Good evening, Chair Potacek, school board members, and Assistant Superintendent McDowell. Excited to share with you all the good news from the bond sale today for the districts, or for the refunding of the district's 2011A certificates of participation. As you can see from the table of contents here, I've kept my presentation to a short 3 slides, trying to focus in on the results of the sale today, since a lot of the details associated with this refinancing were shared with the board at the October 10th meeting. So with that, just want to give an overview of the sequence of events today that led up to get us to this point. Baird took bids from underwriters on the district's behalf today at 11 a.m. As you can see from this slide, received 2 bids from Piper Jaffray and Northland Securities to purchase the refunding certificates. From there, as you can see, Piper Jaffray was the winning bidder with a 1.84 true interest cost, which is the equivalent to your home mortgage rate. Once Piper Jaffray was verified as the winning bidder, Baird worked to run the numbers based on their scale, and from there worked with the district's bond counsel, Knutson, Flynn, and Deans, to prepare the resolution that's in front of you all for consideration tonight, as well as various other legal documents, which, like your home mortgage, there's various mortgage documents associated with a refinancing such as this. Yeah.
This is, we're refinancing the certificate of participation that we use to purchase or to build the ECFE building. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Just for the purpose of the public knowing what the thing that we're talking about is. Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
One thing I'd like to point out, if you'll notice, the winning bidder, as I said, was awarded based on true interest cost, which Piper Jaffray came in at just shy of a 1.85%. Northland Securities came in at about a 2.02% rounded. Typically, that spread is anywhere from 2 to 5 basis points, or 0.02% to 0.05% between the winner and second place. This spread differential of almost 17 basis points, or 0.17%, shows me that Piper Jaffray put in a very aggressive bid to purchase your certificates.
Cool.
Which is why.
I like aggressive.
So now, the good news. I'll move down right to the bottom. In bold there, you'll see total gross savings of $827,493, which includes $2,957 of what's called rounding amount, or additional proceeds for you as a district to use towards the financing, since the certificates are issued in $5,000 denominations. If we move up to the next figure above that, $824,536 is the debt service savings over the life of the borrowing as a result of today's bond sale. Just want to highlight a few items. If we go up in the assumptions column, look down to item number 3 there, went through the rating process with Moody's Investor Service to get the certificates rated. They did affirm the district's rating on the COPS at a AA3 and affirmed the AA2 rating on the general obligation debt, which is what we expected. So no surprises there. If we look at the assumptions in the first number 1 there, you'll notice a dated closing date of December 11th, 2019 is when the district will receive the proceeds from the sale. Moving to the bar graph in the middle of the slide in the left middle portion, again, as I reiterated at the October 10th meeting, not extending the maturity or shortening the maturity of the 2011 certificate, simply exchanging the higher existing rates with the lower current borrowing rates in the market now. Move to the middle portion. If we look in the gray box, again, savings, the $827,493 is net of the financing costs. And just as a reminder, it's not showing up very well on the slide, but the savings amount shared with the board on October 10th was $650,116. So you can see
it's roughly about 170,000 more
correct
than we anticipated, which is great news. Shelley?
Can you just explain, the one place says that savings is net of financing costs, and it says total gross savings. So why is it net and gross at the same time?
So gross is alluding to, in the bond industry, there's gross savings, which is the debt service, actual debt service savings that you see from the refinancing. There's also something that's called net present value savings that takes into account the time value of money, which would be, I don't have the dollar figure, but that's the 10.07% that you see in the bottom left in that blue box.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Liz?
So roughly, I can't see the whole number, sorry, but over $800,000 will be saved over the life of the bond, correct?
Correct.
So then what is the remaining, when will it be fulfilled?
2029, it will be paid off. In the far left column below the bar graph there, the fiscal year 2029 is when the final payment will be made. No, that's all right.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No.
All right.
Thank you for
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
the results. It's great news.
Absolutely, you bet.
Kristen, thank you as well.
So just want to summarize quickly next steps. First step, of course, is to adopt the awarding resolution tonight. What that resolution does is awards Piper Jaffray as the underwriter or purchaser of the certificates, and also locks in the payment structure and savings that I alluded to on the previous slide. Also alluded to on the previous slide, next immediate step would be to move towards closing on December 11th, in which Baird will work with the district's bond counsel to make sure all the documents are ready to go for that. At closing on December 11th, the certificate proceeds will be invested in state and local government securities, which is a typical investment vehicle for refinancing structures such as this for issuers across the nation, be invested up to the call date of February 1st, 2020, when the existing certificates will be paid off with the proceeds from today's sale.
Great news.
Any other questions?
No, I
All
think
right.
what we're going to do is take a vote. And if you look in your packet, there's probably a motion in there. Jen?
I'll make it, I'm hoping that this is going to be a unanimous consensus tonight. Well done, well done. Our taxpayers are happy.
Jen,
I shouldn't
not
say
only-
that.
Not only that, but we are going to stay, and I say that of Sarah, myself, the clerk, and the chair to make sure those are signed tonight.
That's excellent.
No room for changing of mind.
That's excellent. Well, I will move to adopt a resolution to award the sale of the refunding certificates of participation dated November 21st, 2019.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Do you need us to have Piper Jaffray in this motion listed specifically? Or is it okay if it's not?
No, it's
Oh, I thought
contained
you said-
within the resolution.
Oh, yeah, it's
Yep.
just in the document, yeah.
All right. Having heard the motion and the second, all those in favor, and I think it will be unanimous, signify by saying aye and raising your right hand, and
Aye.
it is unanimous.
Aye.
Okay, thanks.
So upon that, there is a decent amount of documents that are ready for both yours and Sarah's signature. My notary should be here in the next 2 minutes, so if you do call a break, maybe take your break
We
and then
will.
come back to the table.
We will. That's a great idea. Let's, pardon?
Can we get your slides too? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, can you forward those slides to Kristen and then get them to
Yeah,
us?
I have them, so I will make sure I send the
Okay.
prezo out.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Great, no, that's a great point. Okay, let's adjourn till about, 10 minutes or so. And if the notaries come, will we physically, you want us to do that once the notary's here?
Well, you have a choice, Mike, where either you can do it right away, or she'll just wait until the end of the meeting, and then we can do it after. It's whatever works.
We'll do it afterwards, because
Yeah.
I don't want to keep people waiting out there and the
Okay.
rest of the board, so.
Yeah, it's over the life of the 9 years.
Mr. Vuce, you guys, when can he be here? Elizabeth said, oh, hi, Jill.
I was just there last night.
Yeah.
She's so great.
She gave me her cell. She goes, you want to text me? And then have it like ready to get here. Oh my God.
She's so amazing.
Yeah.
We were with this other couple. We took them out to dinner in Manchester, and they don't. It's for vanilla.
Our recess is over. We'll reconvene. And as soon as I put my eyes back on, and there they are. Let's go to school board building liaisons, and Shelley's going to tell us all about that.
Thank you. We had tabled this from last meeting because of time, and it's back on for tonight for action. You have in your board packet the explanation that goes along with the school board liaisons and a schedule of the next 4 semesters. And then with an understanding that after that, it'll just keep rotating to the next. We talked today in community engagement about, because it is the end of November in semester 1, we're going to extend our first time through January. So you'll have till the end of January to get those in. And then we also, at our December 3rd work session, we'll have an opportunity to meet with our 2 principals of our programs individually. So that can be one of your touches for this the first go round, if you would like it to be. And then we know it's shortened, so we're not policing whether you're going, just make an attempt to connect with the principal and then go to some kind of event at the school. And so that's the assignments. And then regarding the first page, there's been one question that I think we haven't quite decided how to land on. And it's the first bullet point that says, since board members make all decisions with the good of the entire district in mind, the assignments are not meant to be advocacy positions, but to allow board members to gain a broader perspective about the district. So the question here has been, how do we make this read so that we're not fighting for only the building that we are assigned to, but to not be precluded from saying, I noticed at this building a need. So we want to be able to do both. Our focus is the whole district. We don't want to only fight for one building, but if we see a need, we don't want to be kept from being able to bring up needs that we see. So I don't know if it's good enough for people to just have that explanation, or if you feel like there needs to be stronger language in that bullet.
Can I say something?
Is it okay if we just have a conversation about it? Go ahead.
Okay. I actually think it wouldn't be so much of a fighting for one particular school because that it is so broken up. There's not a real long longevity with where you are, that you're moving around frequent enough.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
That's my opinion.
Thank you.
Others?
Yeah, I agree. Director Riley, I agree with that. I think when we first started talking about this, I think what the intent of having liaisons is for us to give us an opportunity to build a little bit of a relationship throughout the district, so that people have an opportunity to know that we support our schools, that we support our parents, that we're present, out and about, and just being available to listen and, I guess just build relationships. So I think that was kind of what the intent of some of this language was supposed to be. I think it's important that we recognize we're not supposed to be advocating specifically for a building, but it's primarily about building the relationship and listening.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts?
Just general thoughts about that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really know. I know that some time ago there were these liaisons, building liaisons with the board. And then they went away. I'm not really sure all the reasons behind the initial institution of it and then taking it away. What I am wondering, I think I've heard one of the risks of going into a building is kind of extrapolating, taking small data points and extrapolating that to be true for the whole. And so what I would like to see is maybe at the end of the school year, can we revisit
Yep, thank
how
you.
this is working?
We talked about that today, so thank you for bringing that up. And I think, Sheriff, we could put that on for the summer. We talked about summers are a little lighter. Maybe we can revisit it then, see how it went, see if we need to tweak anything. That's a good recommendation.
The only thing I want to mention too is that I think getting into the buildings has a lot of value to it. One of the things that Denise and I talked about this afternoon is for board members to have an opportunity to go and see some of the, particularly the elementary schools in operation with their learning classrooms, see kids, see the teachers, and watch. I was invited last year to do that. Well, maybe not quite as far, but I was invited over to do that at Lily Lake. And to be honest, I still carry that visual image of what I saw, and I found it extremely valuable. So,
Mark, did you have anything else?
No, I think as long as, you know, I would like to revisit at the end of the school year and talk about our experiences with it. And I think that would be beneficial for this.
Okay, thank you.
So, something I just thought of, and I think we talked about it a few meetings ago at Community Engagement Working Group, but we didn't talk about it today, is that we are still interested in trying to keep these meetings as short as possible. So I think we did say, you know, we don't feel the need to report at the end of our meetings about things that we've done as part of our liaison position, just because as much as that's really fun and wonderful to hear, it's just going to make our meetings longer. So I know that's one thing when there were liaisons, sometimes we would hear really great stories, but it makes the meeting longer. So
Thank you.
we'll just keep that in mind.
Yep.
You know,
And
like, not that you can't.
Right.
But just, you know.
But it's not
keep it in mind.
required.
It's not required, right?
And it also, you know, it's in here, but it, you know, when you're assigned to a school, it doesn't mean you can't go to any other school too. So just
That's
know
right.
that, you know,
Keep
there's
it
no
in mind.
territory.
keep in mind, we're trying to get done by 9, so keep going. All right.
Tonight?
So can we make a motion?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I commend Shelley for your hard work on this. You know, you took the lead on this and you did a good job. You took a wide variety of different opinions into perspective, and I know that was challenging, and you did a really nice job with that, Shelley. And I for me, the big concern has been when we had these liaisons, and I wasn't on the board, but there were some really hurt feelings in the community that some board members were favoring their school that they were assigned to over other schools, almost to the detriment of other schools. And I just want to say in this moment in time, that is absolutely not the spirit of this. It's not the intent of this. I like the idea of hearing, you know, whomever's at Lily Lake, if assigned to that, for example, and if you hear something or see something or have a conversation with someone, and I guess I do want to know at the board table, you know, this is what I heard at Lily Lake, because if I'm assigned to it, it would behoove me to share that with the board. So I guess I'm not asking for a big, long dissertation on what's going on. At the same time, I think it would benefit each other and the community to just bring up any issues that may be going on at the school. And I think the topic that we really, really worked on was the rotation. And that hopefully will take care of the struggle of having and owning your school for this long period of time. The constant rotation, because what is the purpose and what is the intent of this? And I can support that. The advocacy was a deep concern of mine, and there were quite a few hurt feelings. So I think, again, Shelley, you did a nice job with this.
Thank you. Do we want to, any more questions? Anybody want to make a motion?
So do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve I'll make a motion to approve the liaison, school board liaison positions, and yeah, that's all you need.
Okay, Liz?
Second.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye and raising your right hand, please.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously.
And just, if I can, just thank you to Jen and Sarah for It took us a long time to get that done, but thank you that we got it done and we can start hitting the ground running with our schools.
Good job. Well done. School calendar, 220, 221. Dr. McDowell.
All right, last week we presented the 3 calendar options and gave a presentation on the differences between the 3 calendar options for 2021. And tonight we're asking the school board to decide on a school calendar option for the school year 2021.
Okay. And I think everyone has a copy of the 3 options there, and Bob went through those in depth, I thought, last time. Does anyone wish to make a motion, and then we'll work from the motion?
Before we do, can we
discuss first?
Yeah, could we, I want to get some clarity about some of the emails that we got just recently.
Okay, you want to do that before there's a motion?
I do.
Okay. Please.
Could we, I mean, is there?
Absolutely.
Can you speak to it? I mean.
I'll do my best.
Yeah.
Does he know what email?
Well, we got an email from somebody regarding the.
Are you speaking of the athletic email?
The athletic email, yeah.
So my understanding is that, and I think I forwarded to all of you, right? The email that we received from Ricky Michael and from Bo Labor, just regarding after they took a look at calendar option A, the feeling was that starting that early was going to impact not only football, it wasn't just about football, but also I think Ricky Michael pointed out most significantly tennis and the ability for those fall teams to have their 2-a-day practices being uninterrupted. And so I just wanted to make sure that all of you were aware of that. I think it's a legitimate concern because it impacts a lot of kids if that.
Yeah, and I think there was an added part to that because in all sports, you have to have a certain number of practices before you hold competition. And so by doing a double practice in tennis, they were fulfilling 2 practices every day.
Yeah, I don't know about the exact requirement for that, but it is impacting their ability to do their 2-a-days.
Yeah.
Well, and I think just a clarification, because of some of the emails, I think there's an assumption by some parents that fall sports is determined by so many weeks before school starts, but I think it's a date that the state determines.
It allows you, yeah.
So it would be maybe only 1 week.
Correct.
For calendar A.
Correct. Calendar A, if sports opened if calendar A started, you'd only have the week of the 17th because sports open on the 17th, and then you'd be right into school on the 24th already. So you wouldn't be able to do 2-a-days because school is in session. So again, I think it's a legitimate concern.
Okay. Other comments? Questions?
I don't have, I guess I'll just cut to the chase. I want to first of all thank the massive amount of emails that we received. We asked for them and we got them. So thank you for that, families. I think where I'm at, what I saw was I saw a wide swath of support for calendar A. That was where my head was initially. But where my deductive reasoning with this came in, I saw some complaints about A, some complaints about C, not B. As I looked through all of these emails, kind of seemed the calendar that wasn't too painful on many people. I hardly saw any real complaints about B. I'm thankful for Bo Labor and Ricky for that comment. That matters. And, you know, the team, the calendar committee did a great job. That's not a fun job, and it's tough work. So I guess for me, that's where I'm just cutting to it. That's where my head is at with calendar B. I'd make a motion unless we want to talk about it more.
Is there a second?
Was there a?
I think
she said she would make a motion.
Did you make a motion?
Sure. I'll make a motion to
that's
adopt.
the way I thought
That's okay,
Calendar B.
Mike. I'll make a motion to adopt calendar B.
I'll second.
Okay.
Okay, Sarah was the loudest.
Even though Mark
All
had
right.
his hand up.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further comments, questions? sharings?
Just, I wanted to follow up on Director Pelletier's comment about the emails, because we got many, many, many emails, and some will say, I believe strongly in option A, and every single person I've talked to agrees with me. I haven't heard about anybody who disagrees. And then the next email we get says the exact opposite. So just to understand that
those two people don't talk.
So there are a wide, diverse array of opinions on this, and what we are trying to do as a board and what the administration is trying to do is find the best solution for the most people.
Right. I would agree with that. And I just want to share this, not that it's going to necessarily change my vote, but I grew up in Wisconsin. We always started before Labor Day. That's not been an issue for me. But I have wondered if I think the spirit of the law is if you have construction projects that you need more time for. So it's bothered me a little bit. And so I went to try to justify a B calendar vote by looking at all of our comparison districts. And so I looked at 28 districts, all our comparisons, and then all the districts bigger than us. Nobody starts before Labor Day, except for Hudson in Wisconsin. So
South Washington too.
South Wash, September 3rd. They don't have their next year. So 15 of the 28 have their next year approved, and they all start September 8th. So, and the one that doesn't is Hudson, which is the Wisconsin schools. So I'm struggling a little bit with that really, even though they could start earlier, they're not. And whether that's something we need to consider, that just because we can doesn't necessarily mean we should. But also I know June 11th is late to get out.
Part I would share before I take your question, if you go back to Wisconsin, the law's been changed and they
Now they have to start after Labor Day?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. And for some of the same reasons. Kristen?
I find the one positive to your statement, Shelley, is quite honestly, we get drivers. We have drivers coming from all over the place because we start running our routes before others. I mean, and that's just bus drivers. That's just the real world impact for us, that we can at least get up and running before other schools do, which means we're never short the first week or two of school, which allows time for inventory. I'm just saying that is one positive that in my department is very, very big. So again, I'm actually glad for a little bit of the lag because it helps us.
Right, which I appreciate. It just, for me personally, I kind of was under the impression that other schools were doing it too, and they're not really doing it. And I think because the governor hasn't made an exception for next year, it's just, for me, a little bit of a dilemma. I went out trying to find other schools that were doing it so I could justify B, but I couldn't find any.
And one, thanks for that, Shelley. One, for me, the justification, I mean, there were many, but the emails, but also the staff really, if you go back to those staff emails, I mean, they really heavily seem to push for pre-Labor Day start, and even the students, so, yeah.
Which I do really appreciate. I appreciate all that feedback. It's hard for me because it is a state law for a reason, and it's hard for me to push back against that.
Can I speak to that?
Chairperson, I'll go.
Is yours related?
Yeah, it is.
Go ahead, then I'll go after.
So I would say that I tend to agree that starting after Labor Day is something that it's a tradition here in Minnesota. It has been for a while, and I think there are benefits to it. This year, it is so late. It is as late as it can be. And then, in addition to that, we have an election year, so that we have a forced day off. So it really pushes that first semester very, very late. So while I agree, I think I would like to consider post-Labor Day start for 21, 22.
Second.
But maybe the way
Does anybody know when that's going to be? Is it going to be early?
Look at it really quick. It should be early next year. Thank you. And I just, like I said, B is what I would prefer.
It's Sarah's turn.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree with what Director Pearson, I agree with you guys both. I feel the same way. In fact, last year I attended some of the hearings, the Senate hearings, when we were talking, and it happened to be the topic was the calendar. And one of our senators, Carla Nelson, has put forward a legislation every year for I don't know how many years to try to change this law so that schools are allowed to start before Labor Day. And I happened to be there the day when the state fair representatives and a consortium of northern Minnesota resorts came, and they gave these really compelling arguments for the economic reasons for having our after Labor Day start. And I think to honor that tradition and culture and history in our state is, I think it's important. We have a lot of people in our community that are heavily involved in the state fair, and I would think that this is kind of a hardship for them to try to navigate, if school starts and state fair is going on, that's a challenge. And so, I mean, I was just interested. I brought the actual law that says, the statute is 120A.40 school calendar. And it says, except for learning programs during summer, flexible learning year programs authorized under sections 124D12 and 124D127. Learning year programs, a district must not commence an elementary or second school year before Labor Day, except as provided. And there are some excuses or exemptions, and one of them is to be able to do construction of a large project. But of course, I think the spirit of that is if you have a large project that's going to be affecting students that, they can't actually get into the building. And then I think we do a lot of construction every year, but, it's not usually a hardship to keep kids from being able to be in the building. So going forward, I think next year, probably Labor Day will be sooner because this is about as late as it can go. It'll cycle into
September 6th.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we really need to seriously look at that for next year. I think this year, being that it's on the 8th, or that it's so late, makes it, or it's on the 7th, that's going to be really hard. I do have a question, though. I guess I would generally support calendar B as well. Being that it's sort of a happy medium. And I also would like to echo that it was really great to hear from so many different people. Maybe next year we can try to get a survey out. I think a couple people asked for that, a little bit earlier. But I do have a question on option B, and I'm not sure what we do about this. Maybe there's a really good explanation for it. But on the 19th of October, it's a brown day. It says conference planning and conferences. And that happens to be the Monday right after MEA. So we have the Thursday and Friday off the week before, and then that would be a Monday off for students, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering, I just want to clarify, is that going to be an actual conference day, or is that a conference planning day? Because I think it says we don't know, it says conferences are to be determined. So can you just explain that a little bit?
It is what ends up happening is our elementary schools use the morning typically for conference prep, and then they run conferences from 11:30 until 7:30 on that day.
Okay.
It's a conference prep day for the secondary staff.
Okay. So the only thing I'm worried about with that is that if it's literally at the end of a 4-day weekend, are we basically saying, I just think we're not going to have a very good attendance. I think a lot of people do take that MEA weekend and go somewhere. So if they also have Monday off and conferences are, optional, I just think having those fall conferences is really important. I don't want to have it on a day where
So we did it that way this year.
Yeah. And it was fine?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
For those who remembered, I forgot. But
my kids aren't in the district anymore, so that's why I don't know that, or I don't remember that, and it worked out okay.
Yep. As far as we know.
Attendance was good, normal. It wasn't a problem.
As far as we know. Haven't heard otherwise.
One more.
Thank you. We also got feedback about that Friday before Labor Day, and we've had several years where we've given that off to families, so they had a 4-day, but it's not this year.
The one after which one?
The one before Labor Day, I'm sorry, the 4th. Mm-hmm. That we've been giving that Friday off and are not, and people, it was kind of, I think, a little bit of a compromise why we were starting before Labor Day, but we gave a longer weekend.
I don't, is there a question?
Well, I guess one, did you talk about it in committee? Because we have been extending that to families. And then 2, is there anywhere we can find a day where we can continue extending that to families.
I don't currently have a date. If we would have put it in there. But to get it off the top of my head here, I don't know what day you would take to add the 4th back in.
Maybe the election messed it up.
Yeah, I think the issue is the election. We have 2 days with the election that are off now.
Plus that would
Yeah, I guess.
have no B1 and B2.
Yeah, the only way that I could see doing it off the top of my head here is you would have to make Monday, November 2nd a school day, and that would be the last day of first quarter, and then you would make Tuesday, November 3rd, the grading day, and then somehow you'd have to turn Friday the 4th into a professional development day, and that's not going to go over well because you're a week into school and you're going to have a professional development day. So I totally get what you're trying to do, which is exactly what what you're doing now is exactly what goes round and around the table. So it's not an uncommon question. I guess my answer would be what we've come up with is the best solution we could figure out, putting people together and trying to do it other than redoing it, because the only other way I can think of is shifting days across the whole calendar, and now we'd be talking about redoing semesters to try and get it to work.
Liz?
I was just going to say, we actually counted the emails, and I did a very unscientific tally, but we got 156 emails, 79 for calendar A, 53 for B, and 24 for C. And initially, I was trying to respond to everybody and say thank you for voting, but I think I only got to a third. But I just wanted to say thank you for sharing your thoughts, because it is helpful to hear. And several people just were curious why spring break was so late on all 3 calendars.
The reason for spring break being where it is it misses all of the Minnesota State High School League competitions, as well as our local, as far as I understand, our local club sports, which is something that came up the last round, was can we do anything to accommodate our families, even the families that aren't in school sports. So that's where it landed.
Yeah, that is a challenge.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? And I'll go quick. Seeing none, let's call the vote. All those in favor of the motion, which I believe is to accept B,
Calendar B.
please signify by saying aye and raising your right hand.
Aye.
Aye. Was it unanimous?
I think so.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Barely.
Yeah, but a lot of thought, and I think we traded that off very well. Thank you all. Those are not easy decisions. Then what we have for D is the final reading, policy 534, unpaid meal charges. And I believe that, Sarah, that's
Okay, so
the committee to my right.
That's correct. And please jump in if I miss something or if we need to add something. So this is policy 534. It is the unpaid meal charges. Again, this is a policy that's mandatory. We are required to have this policy by the state. It was formerly called SR 1.27. And we've made a few changes, sort of updated it a little bit to more closely reflect current practices. Anything in red is sorry, I'm getting a thought here, but I'll save it for later. We did make some changes from last time. If you guys recall from our last meeting, there were a couple of errors in here, and I've checked, and they have been corrected. And so now, as this policy as is, we need a motion to pass it. This is the final reading.
I'll move.
Second.
Who moved? Oh, Shelley?
Shelley and Liz.
Liz seconded. Any further discussion, questions? Saying none, hoping none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye and raising your right hand, please.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Secondary literacy curriculum was removed from the agenda. We are on to board member reports. In the interest of brevity, I have none. Let's go to working group reports, and that starts off with community engagement.
Thank you. I'll go quickly. Community engagement met today. We talked about the World's Best Workforce annual meeting that's coming up on December 3rd. So if you would please mark your calendars and invite everybody you know. This will be this state law requires us to have this annual meeting where the group will report out about our goals and our progress on those. And it'd be great to have a good turnout there.
And the date again?
December 3rd, 7 p.m. at Stillwater Middle School in the library. And then we also talked about, we're going to start doing some work to engage our senior communities. So at our next meeting on December 12th, we're going to invite some of our senior community leaders to join us and just start talking about how can we engage better with them? What opportunities are there for us to start building relationships with them? And I think there was something else, but you'll get it in your notes about what we talked about.
Finance and operations.
Our meeting this month was canceled, and so last month we met on October 29th, and we had, Ricky Michael was in attendance and gave a presentation on prepaying athletic officials, asked the board to revisit athletic supply equipment uniform budget decision, and I don't know if a date has been set for when the board wants, if is that going to come as a report or action item to the full board, or? Yeah.
At last meeting.
No,
the increase in athletic fees.
Oh,
yeah.
I would imagine that would be unless you want to open up the discussion now, I would assume that would be part of the budget conversations that we have moving into the spring.
Okay. And then we discussed questions to the bond distribution sheet, and then there was a draft of potential boundary changes. And is that something that can be shared on the website, the boundary scenario we were presenting?
I think it is on there. Is it?
No,
or it just talks about.
I was actually going to send an email. I forgot. I looked for it and it's not on there.
It just talks
a
about
statement
the
that
conversation.
they were considered, but there's no.
Yes, we can
there's no
share
link.
that.
Okay. And that was it.
Okay. Next, moving to
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Go ahead.
And on the agenda was also audit questions, but the other three things took the full 2 hours, so we didn't have time. And a speaker tonight said that it was suggested that we have a working group. That was actually my suggestion, and nobody voted on it or anything, but I just wanted to clarify that I was the one that made that suggestion, to have a working group about the audit.
Okay.
That's it. Okay.
Moving on to legislative, I believe at the last meeting, Denise reported on our legislative breakfast, and we had the most attendees. I thought it went very, very well from my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
We were trying to get a meet and greet with our local legislators, and I think two things. One, most of them attended that breakfast, so they weren't necessarily interested in coming back. Another is a very important one to a lot of legislators, in that we had to schedule that to come up pretty soon, and a lot of legislators take off and go away before session started. So it not being an election year, they felt that they had a different attention later. So we may have something like that later on. And then the last thing that we're attempting to do, but that's a little bit projected in the future, is to have a meeting with our area school districts, with superintendents and board members, with our local House of Representative Betty McCullum, and talk to her about the need for helping us address the cross-subsidy, or the part of special education that the feds have not been willing to move very much in several decades. And so we'll attempt to make that and set that up. But that's in the future. Next is policy.
I don't think there's anything to share. We have our next meeting is December 3rd.
Okay. Then we have board member reports. Mark, I'll start at your end, if I may.
Sure. So I guess my only report is that I was not here last meeting, and that seemed to be kind of a big deal. So I had prepared a number of comments and to try to have a conversation about, kind of how we best move forward as a board, and ended up not being on the agenda tonight. But so I do hope that we are able to address that sooner rather than later. We talked about December. I hope that we can have a discussion, because I think what I had prepared is really discussion around how we can move forward in a way that is together, and I think that that's feasible. So I just hope that we have that conversation very soon.
Good, thank you. Liz?
I'm good.
Sarah?
Yeah, I just had a quick thing. I wanted to take a moment to just, with regard to the literacy curriculum, I want to say I'm deeply sorry for any distress that my personal role in this situation has caused for a lot of people. We heard from a lot of people tonight at the open forum. It is truly my hope and goal to assure that we as a board work together to make sure that all of the necessary supports are available to our staff, so that they can ensure that our students are receiving the highest quality education we can possibly provide. I feel like we need to make sure that all of the pieces that need to be in that plan are there. And from my perspective, some pieces were missing, and some of it was due to questions that were unanswered, but some of it was due to budget cuts that we've had in the past. I want to make sure that we have enough professional development, and I want to make sure that all the pieces are there for all of our students, so that everyone is being able to excel and learn how to read and love reading. And I'm very excited. I agree with you, Mark. I think a little bit more conversation will be very helpful. We'll be able to come together and revisit this, and I'm looking forward to working on that together.
Thank you. Shelley?
Thank you. First, just to echo what some of my fellow board members have said, thank you to those of you who shared your thoughts on the calendar, for those who are serving on the community design team, for those who have come to our meeting, and the 4 of you who are still here. Just thank you for the engagement. We appreciate that, and it does matter to us. We do read the emails. We try to respond when we can. Sometimes it is a little overwhelming when there's more than 100. But we do thank you for that. The only thing I'm going to share is I went to a Community Engagement Advisory Council meeting, and the report was about the PAC, and it is wildly successful. It's been a really great thing. Our memberships are going up all the time. It is, if you're ever there, it's busy almost all the time. And it's good for our students, it's good for our community, it's a great place for people to come together. So kudos to Annette and her team and the work that they've done putting that all together. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Tina?
I have nothing.
Jen?
I just have a couple things. I would try to be quick. Having no more trick-or-treaters in my home. The highlight of my Halloween this year was the opportunity to dress up as a bizarre mix of Mary Poppins and Mother Goose in a robe. And as we visited classrooms, and I think we were all invited to do that, and it was just awesome. To use hyperbole. I want to thank the little bugaboos from Lake Elmo Elementary for humoring me and listening to me, and the wonderful teachers and PTA moms for giving us this memory. It was certainly a memory. Washington County Mental Health meeting, I'm on a county mental health committee, and we received a report on mental health and time in the local jail system and how mental health is related to that, and it's obviously, it's quite directly related. In short, we also received a report from Sam Smith of NAMI, who discussed the state of things from their perspective. We talked about funding at the state level, unfunded mandates, and the like. I pressed for the need to continue the pressure on our legislature for sustainable funding as opposed to one-time funding. Of note was a social worker from District 833 who spoke up and shared the stresses in the classroom as well. And it was a great moment. I think it was a moment of solidarity. We ended up speaking in tandem and discussing the stresses of our teaching staff as well, something that maybe we need to pay more attention to. Lastly, second to last, I'd like to offer a message in honor of a public servant we lost a couple of weeks ago. Randy Kopesky, council member of Lakeland Shores and previous mayor, passed away unexpectedly. I first met Randy about 10 years ago through my work with the Beyond the Yellow Ribbon Initiative for military families. Randy was instrumental in success of the scholarship program for students and military families at the high school. He was a selfless servant, an optimistic gentleman who took joy in giving to others. You will never have heard a boastful comment come from Randy. He was a do-gooder simply because he loved his community and he loved serving military families. I relay this message in support of Randy's wonderful wife, Reggie, a 30-year staff member of Stillwater Schools. The beautiful family that Randy left behind. His moral character and sense of servitude will never be forgotten. And with that, I just want to lastly move on to say I am sincerely sorry for what happened last week. You did a wonderful staff presentation, and you couldn't have been more prepared. And I feel we failed you in this moment, and you elect us to make decisions and ask questions prior to these votes. And I'm so very sorry that the staff left so upset. That is something that that will bother me for a long time. That's it. Thank you.
Fine, I think we are finished. So can I get a motion to adjourn?
Sure.
Liz moved, a second.
I'll second.
Is there a second? We are adjourned.
I think you don't need a motion. I think we can
That's
just
okay.
adjourn.